company has been ordered to repay, but it says it's appealing.
I'm so happy and teary-eyed, finally. We got justice.
Roel Pailan's reaction to an Ontario Labour Ministry decision ordering he be repaid more than $10,000. He told CBC he paid that money to an Alberta company to get work at an Ontario Canadian Tire, not knowing that's illegal in Canada. An Ontario Labour Ministry officer investigated two companies, Allison Jones Consulting and AJ Immigration Group, and concluded they were working together and charged Pailan unlawful fees. They have the same owner and operate from the same address in Alberta. But Allison Jones Consulting argued it was paid by Canadian Tire to do worker recruitment, while AJ Immigration says it was paid by workers for immigration services. Both services are legal on their own, but it isn't legal for a recruiter to charge a foreign worker for a job placement. The company's owner, Allison Jones, sent CBC a statement. She is appealing and said both her businesses are distinct legal entities that comply with the law. Some of Pailan's former co-workers complained too. His decision is one of 8 issued by Ontario against Allison Jones's companies. They were told to repay almost $165,000 and fined $2,000 more. Chris Ramsarup of Justice for Migrants says the process is a barrier for vulnerable workers.
There's an expectation that they need to come forward rather than the province or the federal government taking steps to protect the interests of workers.
Roel Pailan is happy about the decision, but worried an appeal might mean he'll never get his money back. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Cities across the United States are celebrating Juneteenth, the day when Americans commemorate the end of slavery in the U.S. Since 2021, Juneteenth has been a federal holiday, one often marked with parades and concerts. Cavalier Johnson is the mayor of Milwaukee.
The thing that really encourages me, that has been encouraging me, is the continued growing diversity that we see around this event. That's not just for diversity's sake. It's because more and more people in our community are starting to understand the importance of this holiday.
Black people have celebrated Juneteenth going back to 1866, but Americans didn't get the day off until President Joe Biden made it a national holiday in 2021. Donald Trump's White House has no official events planned today. And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Angie Seth. This is CBC News.
Well, welcome to the Thursday Morning Show, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. Thanks for joining us. 6:10 a.m. It's already 15 degrees. And that is the hot spot across Manitoba. Thompson comes in at the cold spot this morning at -1. As I always remind you, Abby's in a moment with our forecast. Well, let's talk about tomorrow, because my first guest this half hour needs really good weather. He's going to spend 24 hours on a bike. Could you do it? He's doing it. We're going to meet him, hear his motivation for his special ride. So stay tuned. He's going to join us via Zoom in a moment. Also, coping with grief. There's a new report out calling for a national strategy to help Canadians experiencing loss. You might have heard a bit about this. We're going to talk about it with someone who's part of the Canadian Grief Alliance. And then at 10 to 7 this morning, more on what is going on between Israel and Iran. They continue, as you heard, to bombard each other with missiles. And it is still unclear if the U.S. will get directly involved. So we'll have a full interview coming up about that just before 7. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other news headlines. These are all local from Manitoba. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Well, people living in homeless encampments near the Disraeli say they want to move into housing, but so far, no one's offered them a place. The province launched a strategy earlier this year to buy up housing units as part of a plan to end chronic homelessness. We're going to hear from someone who has been living in one of those camps and what it's like for them. The province of Manitoba did not follow through on urgent plans in 2023 to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. After the provincial election, the incoming NDP government was advised of plans to hire a consultant to conduct a forensic examination of the wildfire season that year in 2023. The consultant would have looked at how well Manitoba was prepared to respond to wildfires. That consultant was never hired. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather will be with us, of course, throughout the morning. Right now, let's go to Abby Adeyemi for a look at the forecast. Abby, I didn't notice much rain yesterday. A little bit where I live in sort of central South Winnipeg. But how about for you?
Yeah, I noticed a bit of rain in the south end of the city. You know, I saw a bit of puddle here and there, but not a lot. But sure, it was cloudy at some points, and I'm sure it just pushed to the edge of the city and outer part of the city. Got,
or who knows, maybe there were isolated pockets in different neighborhoods. But I was, we need more. My lawn looks really, I mean, this is first world problems, but my lawn is quite dry. And just sort of the plants, we're so happy with the downpour a few weeks ago.
Well, your plants might be smiling again this evening because we do have a good chance of showers in most regions in the southern part of the province. Today, we're looking at mostly cloudy, sunny skies in the northern part of the province, while showers expected overnight in the south. Right now, Winnipeg, 15 degrees. The sun about to make its appearance. As we get into the morning, we'll see some cloudy conditions coming, but that should clear, and then we'll see more sunny conditions and a very warm afternoon. Temperatures climbing close to 24 degrees. With the humidity factored in, it's going to be getting close to 27, 28. With, that this is a period where you get to feel the wind come your way, but it's warm. So it's going to be coming from the south. And then in the evening period, we'll see some clear conditions, also partly cloudy into the night. Then that good chance of showers late tonight into overnight would be coming our way, with also that possibility of thunderstorms to come with that. Across the south, from the Pembina Valley, the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake region, we're seeing temperatures between 11 and 16 at this time. And up north, Churchill is at -1 and sunny.
All right. Thanks a lot, Abby.
Thank you.
Sarah Sanders, good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. The show is just getting started, and that means the morning commute is just getting going. We actually got a call from Zach just before we got on the air.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Zach. Thank you for calling, especially so early. It's nice to have a little information to give people so early. The lights were flashing red in all directions at Osborne and Broadway, so treat that intersection like a four-way stop. If you're out there and you have an update on that intersection, give me a call. And if there's anything you're seeing or slowing you down, be like Zach and call the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, at this time tomorrow at 6:14 a.m., Daryl Forrest will have started something special. He is riding his bike for 24 hours straight. He will stay on it for an entire day to raise money for Habitat for Humanity. His goal is $15,000. He actually has done, obviously, some pre-fundraising for this, and he's nearly at 11, we understand already. But he joins us up early via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell me what motivated you to do this. This is not your first time doing this. You did this last year too, right?
Last year I did it successfully. Only I was able to raise $7,000. So this year is double the goal. And the reason to do it is just a good thing to do. Get behind supporting Habitat to raise money to get people in some houses.
It's interesting because as you were waiting to come on the air here, we had that headline from Heather Wells in our news about someone who was really hoping to get into housing, and they've been homeless for 4 years. Yeah. And I was kind of watching you listen to that. Why is it something that you care about or think about?
Because Habitat is about giving a hand up. So they don't just give it away. So the people have to, volunteer to support to build their house. And then they get a really good rate on their mortgage, and then they have to pay it back, and then that goes back into the fund, and then we continue to build houses.
So you like the model that they go through. So it's for how the families connect with the housing.
Yeah. So it's pretty fantastic, and you watch and you see those people get a home, and it's pretty exciting.
So what's the route you're going to take? Like, you're on the bike for 24 hours, but where do you start and where do you go?
Right. So I live in St. Adolphe. So I'm gonna take it's called Turnbull Drive, and then I come up almost close to St. Norbert. I turn over, going east, sorry, and on Cruchain down to 200 again, and back into Saint Adolphe. So it's about a 23-kilometer loop ish.
How many times do you do it in 24 hours? Was that the loop you did last year?
Yeah, so last year was like 30 some times, but this year is a little different, obviously, because 24 is not enough. So I'm going to push to 1,000 kilometers if people continue to donate me money. And so that'll probably take me to 36 hours or something like that.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow. What do you do when you're on the bike then? Are you just listen to the natural sounds around you? Do you put earbuds in? Because, that's a lot of hours.
My brain is busy, so I've listened to that for a while. But I'll have some friends. I have some friends coming out to visit, so that's they'll come and join me on their bike. They'll chat, tell me some stories. Most of the time is just I don't know. I don't wear earbuds. It's too dangerous to be on the road.
Fair enough. Yeah. Have you been, obviously you've been cycling for a long time, but before you did this endeavor like last year for being on the bike for that long, had you been on a bike for that long before?
I don't think so. Well, maybe like 10 to 12 hours, which is crazy to hear, I guess. But so I've done some races where it's like 200 kilometers, right? So, or some stage races where it's every day for 4 or 5 days, you do a couple hundred kilometers, but nothing of like 24 hours or anything like that.
How have you been training? Does everybody know you? There's Daryl on his bike again, putting in some road time before he gets out there.
Pretty much. It started like in December, so a lot of indoor training. I was fortunate enough to go some hot spots in some areas, and I brought my bike with me. I did some training, and then since the weather has been nice, I've been doing a lot of outdoor rides. So probably like 400 to 600 kilometers a week.
You mentioned support. So will people do they make a date to visit with you or maybe pass you a sandwich when you're on the bike? What does the support look like?
So I got my girlfriend, my daughter, my mom and dad. They're going to be like the support crew. So if I need wheels, a new bike, or whatever it may need, a sandwich, burritos, I'm going to be eating a lot of pizza. Last year I ate 3, maybe 5 this year. I don't know.
I love that.
It's like whatever works, basically.
Yeah.
So I got some friends coming out. There's like a sign-up sheet, so different hours they can come and join and support me through that way.
Are you, you talked about the repairs. So what happened last year? How often were you having to sort of like, oh, the wheel needs some help here?
Yeah, so I caught a nail last year. So luckily I just called my mom and dad. They showed up, gave me a new wheel and put it on the bike and kept going. So normally a cyclist would like have to take the tire off and put a new tube in. And so I don't want to waste too much time. So it's just put a new wheel on and keep going.
Well, what message are you hoping to maybe send to others by taking on this endeavor for Habitat?
I think people don't need to be, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And you don't need to be special to make a difference. So every dollar helps. Every bit of volunteering you can do supports somebody in some fashion.
If people want to follow you along tomorrow, Daryl, or come out to cheer you on, where should they physically show up, and where are you online and on social media if they want to follow that way? Okay,
so that's a good question. So tomorrow I'll be starting in Saint Adolphe at the 4 corners, basically, of the 210 and the 200. So if you know that Esso gas station, pretty much right around there.
Okay.
And I'll be doing a clockwise loop. And you can reach me on Instagram at Daryl_rides for homes. And there has like the sign up sheet. It has where to donate money and just my normal Facebook, Daryl Forrest. And there has some info as well.
All right, merci. Thank you very much, Daryl. Have an awesome ride tomorrow. And thank you so much for being on CBC with us. Good luck.
Take care. Thank you. See you.
That is Daryl Forrest. He's going to be riding his bike for 24 hours. He starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. This is in support of Habitat for Humanity. And as he just mentioned there, you can keep up with his ride on his Facebook page, Instagram, Daryl Forrest, and Habitat for Humanity also has links on their social media pages. It is officially called Daryl's Ride for Home, 24 Hours of Heart.
Why is there so much dancing in commercials these days? Why do ad makers hire so many celebrities?
Oh, this is John Hamm's dog.
And speaking of celebrity, whose voice is that?
Go Bacon! Go Bacon! Go Bacon!
You have questions, Terry O'Reilly has the answers. Ask Terry on Under the Influence, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
6:22 is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It is 15 in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy this Friday. Not so fast, Marcusa. It is mostly cloudy this Thursday morning in Winnipeg. Brandon is cloudy as well. It's 12 degrees. Thompson, you're mainly sunny right now and you're a -1. Well, up next on CBC, turning to something that most of us have or certainly will experience in our life, the loss of a loved one. It can be followed by a lot of complex emotions. And we're always reminded, don't judge yourself for whatever those emotions are going to be. Those feelings can linger or they can come back at any time. There's a new report out that says many of us are not adequately prepared to deal with grief, and that Canada needs actually a strategy to better help people in the aftermath of loss. It comes from the Canadian Grief Alliance. Paul Adams is co-chair with the group and joins us now to talk about this. Good morning. Oh, I believe I have
Hi, Marcy.
Hi, Christy. I'm so sorry. I actually, I need to just update who I'm speaking with this morning. I know there were two people talking about this. So this is Catherine Cortez Miller, not even Christy. So I have to apologize to you. I know, Christy, you're director of the Center for Education and Research on Aging and Health at Lakehead University. Is that all correct?
That is correct. Thanks so very much, Marcy. And yes, a shout out to my fabulous colleague and friend, Paul Adams, who are doing some of these interviews alongside me. It's great to be here this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. I apologize. I know you're both speaking to it. How do you define grief? I mean, I talked about how common this is to all of us, but also how complex it can be. So how do you even begin to describe it?
Yeah, and it's a challenging one, right? When you highlight some of the complexity, but yet 100% of Canadians are going to be experiencing grief at some point in their lives. And sometimes they're going to be grieving more than one thing. So at the Canadian Grief Alliance, we recognize that grief is a universal and natural response to a loss. We often affiliate grief with as being a response to the death of someone important or close to us. But we can be grieving a wide variety of things as we move throughout our lives. We can be grieving the ends of relationships, transitions, moving, loss of jobs, all those kind of things. And I think we sometimes assume that grief is solely an emotional reaction. It's all about our feelings, and we tend to associate sadness with grief. But I think it's important to recognize that it's actually a total human response, that grief impacts us as how we are in the world. It impacts us from a physiological perspective. Often people will talk about needing to be really aware of their physical health while they're grieving. Of course, it impacts our emotions, like I mentioned, but it also impacts our thought process and how we are within the world, and of course, our social relationships.
Obviously, there's a need for this, which is why we're talking about it, a need to help people with this. How prepared do you think most people are for dealing with grief? And if they're not prepared, what are we doing? Or do we just sort of stuff it down or feel like we somehow should get over it or not talk about it?
Yeah, so I think, and there are other researchers who agree with this, of course, that we tend to be in a bit of a grief illiterate society, that we don't spend enough time thinking about grief, how to support ourselves when we're grieving, and how to support other people. And grief becomes a bit of an enigma, something that we don't really understand or know what to do with, but we recognize that it's happening to many of us. And so what you just said, Marcy, is exactly on point, is that we tend to avoid it. We tend to avoid working with our own grief, but also supporting other people.
If you know someone, how do you support them? What's the most helpful thing to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And most people are really worried that they might say the wrong thing in terms of supporting people. And we heard that in a national survey that we did as part of the Canadian Grief Alliance's work, that people found that because people are so worried about what they are going to say, that they tend to say nothing and they tend to not show up. So the most important thing that I think people are looking for when they are grieving are those people who will show up, who will be present for them while they are grieving. And of course, doing some practical things like assisting with food preparation or encouraging people who are grieving to pay attention to their physical health and get out and do some movement. But really, the piece is to not abandon someone when they're grieving, is to be present, to hold space for strong emotions that may come. And if it's a death, for example, of someone close to that person, to use their name, to talk about them, provide opportunity for people to share their memories or their thought processes as they begin to deepen their understanding of their grief.
What healthcare support is there currently available, just as a baseline to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that we have had a bit of a patchwork approach to grief support in Canada. And if I can be blunt, I'd say that we have not done it very well. And we need to be able to build capacity within our healthcare system and also our communities to support one another better. So we need to enhance the training and support for people in healthcare, including grief professionals and volunteers, to build their own skills and their comfort levels to be able to support people who are grieving. Because often our healthcare system is the first encounter people will have around their grief. And we also need to provide space and place for healthcare providers and first responders and people who are holding space for other people's grief to respond to their own grief as well.
How complicated does it get when you have someone that might be well-meaning, but they're not only worried about saying the wrong thing or engaging, but they start to impose what they think is a good thing, and it's actually the opposite. Like perhaps they say, it's time for you to get over this or move on. And they might be well-meaning, and maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. Is part of this encouraging sort of people to just also make mistakes in the conversations? Because I feel like if we don't have that space, people will just, despite everything that we're trying to do to open up the conversation, people will still continue to ignore it, to avoid it.
Yeah, and I think the avoidance of grief, the not acknowledging it, is more problematic. And so I would encourage people to check out, for example, our new website, grief.ca, which has some videos and ideas of different ways to support people. And while I don't think we need to provide scripts for people, it gives some examples of things that can be helpful for people so that they're not doing things, as you highlighted, providing timelines around grief, because there is no time for grief, but rather providing open and caring and compassionate support for people to tell their story as they figure out their new reality as a person who's experienced the loss that they are now grieving.
So grief.ca, you said, Catherine?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll pass that along one more time as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on CBC.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You as well. That's Catherine Cortez Miller. She's an executive member of the Canadian Grief Alliance. So grief.ca is where you can go for more supports and analysis and tools for those conversations. She's director of the Centre for Education and Research on Aging and Health as well at Lakehead University. Coming up, we have business news, so stay with us. We will have Christely Ramlakan in talking about the Liberal government planning an income tax cut. That's right after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 15 degrees. The sky is going to clear out this morning after threatening to rain yesterday. And one of the last days of spring, we are quite seasonal today, a high of 24. People living in homeless camps along the Disraeli Freeway say they are waiting for housing. The province launched a strategy earlier this year to buy up housing units as part of a plan to end chronic homelessness. But some people who live in the camps tell CBC News no one has come by to offer them housing. Maxine Wood has been homeless for 4 years and living in a camp next to the Manitoba Métis Federation building for about 2 months.
Even if we try to get a home, we can't. It's so hard. Like being here, it is so hectic. It's chaos around here because there's people that do drugs and so on. It's crazy.
A senior advisor to Premier Wab Kinew says outreach teams have visited the camp and are working on getting people into housing. But they say supply is limited because the previous government, they say, sold off many social housing units. Community members in the northern town of Lynn Lake are coming to grips with wildfire destruction in nearby Burge Lake Provincial Park. Lynn Lake Mayor Brandon Dolowich says 29 properties burned. His own cottage was among the buildings lost.
The destruction at that subdivision is it's something that's extremely hard to see, and it's my heart goes out to everybody that lost a home or a cottage out there.
The province says the fire near Lynn Lake is more than 70,000 hectares in size, and an evacuation order remains in place. The province also says about 130 buildings have burned in this wildfire season, but they won't say exactly where. Now, evacuees from a northern First Nation who initially had been given the green light to go home now have to wait at least another week. It comes over concerns with Tataspet Cree Nation's water treatment plant. Leadership says testing indicated high levels of aluminum in the water. Chief Doreen Spence says while experts assess the facility, evacuees should not come home until the issues are resolved.
Being away from your community and your family and friends is obviously taking a toll on your health mentally. And, if you need help, you can reach out to any one of the council members here.
Spence says some essential services haven't resumed, including healthcare and garbage pickup. A planned power outage is scheduled over the next 5 days to repair hydrostructures damaged by wildfire. Leadership say they have air purifiers and generators on hand for those who have already returned. The province of Manitoba did not follow through on urgent plans from 2023 to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. After the provincial election, the incoming NDP government was advised of plans to hire a consultant to conduct a forensic examination of the 2023 wildfire season. The consultant also would have looked at how well Manitoba was prepared to respond to the next wildfire season. That consultant was not hired. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says internal assessments of the wildfire service were conducted instead. PC leader Abi Khan is not convinced that prepared Manitoba for this wildfire season.
The question becomes, was this government completely caught off guard of this? Was this government not prepared for this? Why did this government choose to ignore not going forward with the recommendation from the department?
Wildfires this year have displaced more than 22,000 people. Iran has launched fresh counterattacks against Israel this morning. It fired a barrage of missiles that wounded dozens of people in Israel and hit a hospital. And Israel says its warplanes struck more nuclear targets in Iran. The escalating conflict has people from those communities in Canada watching anxiously. Ariane Ariampour, former president of the Iranian community of Manitoba, says he does not support the Islamic Republic's theocratic regime. But he also doesn't like seeing Israeli airstrikes turning his country's infrastructure into rubble. He says the worst-case scenario would be a prolonged conflict.
That is not good for the people of Iran, nor for the people of Israel, nor for the region, nor for the whole world. The best option at this point is to ensure that the international community, through efforts that involve the Iranian people, dismantle the regime's apparatus and move forward.
The conflict started last week when Israel launched strikes targeting Iran's nuclear and missile sites. The world could be fast running out of time to meet climate targets. That's according to a new report. It says the so-called carbon budget to keep the world under 1.5 degrees warming could be out within 3 years. More than 60 scientists worked on that report, published in the journal Earth Science System Data. It also warns carbon budgets for the 1.6 and 1.7 degree warming thresholds could be exceeded within a decade. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And as always, you can find the latest Manitoba news at cbc.ca cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Here's Abby Eddy on CBC. Let's get your regional forecast rolling.
Looking at conditions down south, it's warm and we're already seeing sunny conditions. Still cool up, not though the sun already making its appearance in that region. Also in Winnipeg, 15 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. We're seeing there's a transition to some sunny conditions. Those clouds will clear and give away to mostly sunny and a warm afternoon. Temperatures warm close to 24 degrees, though it's going to feel like 27 with the winds picking up from the north and becoming windy as we get into the day. The clouds will clear as we get more into the evening, and we might see that chance of showers or risk of thunderstorms late this evening and overnight. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region right now. Partly cloudy, also the sun making its appearance. Temperatures around at 13 degrees in Modern Winkler, Altoona Morris, all the way down to the U.S. border. Now we have a slim chance of showers this morning. However, the skies would clear as you get into the day. We'll see temperatures close to 26 degrees. In the Westman region, cloudy also right now in Brandon, sitting at 12 degrees. Expect a mix of sun and clouds through the morning, then more sunny skies later. The winds would come from the northeast and it's going to be easing and feeling mild as you get into the day. Warming up close to 26 also in Brandon. For Dauphin and the rest of the Parkland region, we're seeing temperatures around 12 degrees, 13 degrees right now. The day is going to be bringing a mix of sun and clouds. Also, we do have a slight chance of showers. In that part of the province, we saw some fog patches here and there, but that should clear as you get into your morning. We'll see high around 23 degrees with the winds coming from the south. Gimli, good morning. You are currently at 14 degrees. Cloudy conditions also for the Interlake region. We're seeing a slim chance of showers this morning. However, the skies will start to clear as you get into the morning, warming up close to 22 degrees. The northwest winds will make it feel a bit windy at some point. And then we track conditions in the northern part of the province this morning. We're looking at Thompson right now, mainly sunny in Thompson. Current temperature sits at 0. Expect a clear day, sunshine on its way. You warm up to 20 degrees. The powerful influence surrounding areas, we're looking at 11 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. A mix of sun and clouds also through the day. Temperatures warm to 22. And then further north in Churchill, we're seeing partly cloudy conditions also, and it's about to transition into a sunny morning in Churchill, 8 degrees right now. And then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds. There's a slim chance of showers in that part of the province later. The winds will be coming from the southwest, and then it's going to change directions to the north. Highs will touch 20 for Churchill today. So it's more like down south, it's sunny, and it's cooler up north.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Winnipeg right now, 15 degrees.
Let's get into the morning commute with Sierra Sanders.
Good morning. So we got a call from Zach earlier, just before the show started. The lights were flashing red in all directions at Osborne and Broadway. Those are still flashing red, but crews are on the way to get those lights up and running. So make sure you're treating that intersection as a 4-way stop if they are flashing red. If there's anything slowing you down out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Sierra. 21 minutes to 7 o'clock Thursday morning. Time for business news. Crystal Ramlickan's here with us via Zoom. Hello to you.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the Liberal government planning this income tax cut. How much could people save?
Well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates the average Canadian family will save $280 on their taxes next year. So a 1% cut to the bottom income tax bracket was a pillar of the Liberal campaign during the spring federal election, and the plan pitched annual savings of up to $825 per dual income family. But a new analysis from the PBO says the average family likely won't get that much back. A couple with a child who are both earning in the second income bracket would get closest with $750 in average savings. But most single Canadians and seniors are expected to save less. So the Liberals have tabled a motion last month for the tax to start July 1st, but legislation to actually enact the change is still making its way through Parliament.
To another story, another big Canadian retailer is cutting jobs again. So what are the details here?
Yeah, that's right. So Lululemon is cutting about 150 corporate jobs. The affected employees are part of store support centers. And the company says after a recent review, it's evolving its organizational structure to operate with more agility and to invest in growth. So the move comes as U.S. President Donald Trump's global tariff war ripples through supply chains and dents bottom lines. Trump's tariffs have taken particular aim at China, which is a key market for Lululemon. And the company laid off workers last year, too, when it closed a U.S. distribution center. So the company says it's also planning price increases as it deals with tariffs. Now, they are expected to be modest and will only apply to a few products, but Lululemon says they reflect the pressure that Trump's trade war is putting on consumer spending and the lengths that the business is going to protect itself. And Marcy, shares of the company have plunged almost 29% since it reported its first quarter earnings.
Oh, that's a big number, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And finally, what's old is new again. Netflix is investing in good old-fashioned television.
Yeah, that's right. So the streaming giant has announced a deal to show live and on-demand programming from one of France's television networks, TF1. So the partnership is the first of its kind for Netflix. Subscribers in France will get access to, programming like game shows like The Voice, live sporting events, and soap operas. And the partnership could be a model for Netflix for other markets around the world. So the company has spent extensive time and money in recent years trying to build up its live capabilities. And even though there have certainly been glitches, last November it attracted 108 million viewers for the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight. And then a month later got 65 million to watch 2 NFL games. And of course, Beyonce's halftime show on Christmas Day.
What are the numbers telling us today? What do the markets look like?
In Europe, shares are lower. Germany is down. The UK is down. France is down. In Asia, markets are declining. Japan is down. Shanghai is down. Hong Kong is down. Oil is up $1.05 to $76.19 US per barrel. Gold is up $5.09 to $3,372.64 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 1/10 cent to 72.9 cents US.
All right, thanks, Crystal Lee. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Lee Ramlicam with our business news. It is 6:43 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on that app and YouTube. Thanks for being with us this morning. My name is Marcy Marcusa, here with our show team. In our news department this morning, Heather Wells, Alana Cole, and Megan Ketchison. And Heather will be in with our next headlines before the top of the clock. Today, they're talking about what is happening with encampments is one of the top stories. People living in the homeless camps along the Israeli freeway say they're still waiting for housing. Of course, the province launching a strategy earlier this year to try and move people into different situations. Also, we'll have the mayor of the city of Winnipeg on in the next hour of the program to talk about the city's role in that housing strategy. So that's all still ahead right here on CBC. Next, though, when you think about housing and you think about your life in retirement, a lot of people might imagine downsizing, or it means moving to a warmer climate, perhaps. However, there's new research out in this country that shows that it's not what most Canadians actually desire. In fact, the overwhelming majority want to just stay in their homes. They want to age in place in their family home. Now, according to personal finance columnist Rabina Ahmed Huck, the problem is the decision to stay in your home comes with a set of financial challenges that a lot of Canadians may not have prepared for.
When it comes to retirement, working Canadians say their wish is to stay in their home. New research commissioned by Home Equity Bank and conducted by Ipsos reveals that 90% of Canadians aged 45 and over say they would prefer not to move in retirement.
Of course, the option is not for everybody, but it should be considered by everyone.
Nairi Tadakian is VP of Brand, PR, and Customer Experience at Home Equity Bank. She says the notion that everyone wants to downsize or move to a new place is not true. Their research shows most Canadians prefer the familiarity of their family home. This survey is considered accurate plus or minus 3.8% 19 times out of 20. She adds downsizing has hidden costs that many may not have considered.
You know, when you sell the home and purchase a new home, there's land transfer taxes, there's commissions paid to the realtors, there's retrofitting and preparing for sale. And so some of these costs can add up to anywhere between $40,000 to $100,000, depending on the home that's being sold and purchased.
Tadakian says anyone planning to stay at home should be aware of all the costs associated with that too. It's not as simple as just retiring and living in the same home you've had for decades.
You know, many Canadians are facing significant financial challenges when it comes to in-home care, for instance. Our research shows only 13% have planned for PSW support, and even fewer, 6%, feel they can both plan for it and afford it, which poses a problem for many Canadians. Some Canadians also are unaware of the high cost of in-home care. It can range from $19 to $75 per hour, which can be a major burden.
I find it really hard to put, a number out there.
Leanne Hanaway is a chartered professional accountant and wealth coach. Her focus is to help women, especially first-generation Canadians, build wealth. She says there's no magic number we have to reach to retire. She instead gives her clients this easy calculator to estimate what retirement could cost.
Maybe a guiding principle that you can really think about is, what are the expenses that I have today? And will I have a multiple of that expense in retirement? So if you're spending $50,000 today, a good rule of thumb is to multiply that number by 25, and to really retire comfortably, having 25 times that number in retirement.
The CPA points out that if you plan to stay at home, make sure you calculate construction costs, such as retrofitting your home as your mobility limitations increase. She says there are several government programs seniors can tap to help afford these expenses, but there are still many out-of-pocket expenses beyond that.
I think about my own mother in her own space. We've had to retrofit the washroom, so it's a little bit wider for her to get into the shower. It's no longer a tub. That's a large consideration in terms of a renovation when you're thinking about retiring. Are you in a home that has stairs? Is your bedroom on the second floor? So how are you going to really think about, as you age, how are you able to make sure that you have a home in order to retrofit?
Hanaway says there's no one perfect way to retire, but as working Canadians, you should have a solid financial plan in place to be able to afford whatever happens after you leave work.
Yeah, finding a great advisor who is going to take your considerations into account is, I think, tantamount to what's really going to set you up and really lower your anxiety in retirement.
Both experts say whether you plan to retire and stay in your home or move, the choice is personal, but do the research of all the costs involved with both options. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Haq.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen.
They challenged Manitoba high school students to champion the environment with a video. Now you can see the results. The Climate Change Connections Youth Video Challenge, sponsored by CBC. Get inspired by the winning videos from River East Collegiate, St. John's Ravenscourt, and Louis Riel Arts and Technology by visiting cbc.ca/Manitoba/community to watch.
It's 10 to 7 on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Well, next on the show, let's return to talking about what is going on in the wider world outside of Manitoba here and leading world report. I'm talking about Israel and Iran. So U.S. President Donald Trump continues to play brinkmanship about whether he's going to get the U.S. directly involved with Israel in these attacks against Iran. Both countries say Iran is too close to having the capacity to build a nuclear bomb. Iran denies that. Meantime, Israel and Iran are bombarding each other with missiles. As you know, Tehran is reported to be in a total internet blackout right now. Civilians are escaping Iran's capital city. Paul Waldman is here, columnist for MSNBC. He is in Washington, D.C. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what is the latest since yesterday out of the White House on this?
Well, everyone is trying to figure out what President Trump is actually going to do, and he may not know himself. But the reports that we're getting from inside the administration are that he has attack plans in hand, and people in the administration seem to believe that that is the way he is leaning, and he is going to authorize an attack. So what it would be is the use of these large bunker-busting bombs, especially at an Iranian enrichment facility called Fordo, which is buried under a mountain. And the Israeli weapons don't have the ability to penetrate that. But the one thing that can is these 30,000-pound bombs that have to be carried by a B-2 bomber, and that only the Americans have. Now, of course, if he also authorizes that attack, essentially the U.S. and Iran are now at war. And this is causing a lot of internal dissension within Trump's own party. And obviously, he loves to have everyone unified behind him. But you have a real kind of split within the party that he himself is in large part responsible for. Because back in 2016, when he first ran for president, he was very critical of the Iraq War, which was still kind of heresy within the Republican Party. And it helped create and solidify a real kind of isolationist wing, especially on the far right, that basically believes that the U.S. shouldn't be doing all these kind of military adventures overseas. It's not our problem. We should just keep our attention focused at home. And now you have a lot of those figures from that wing, including in the right-wing media, who are putting pressure on him to stay out of it. And at the same time, you have a lot of very hawkish Republicans who are telling him that this is finally our chance to take care of the Iranian nuclear program. So he's getting pushed both ways. And he keeps saying things in public like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. And so nobody even knows if he himself has decided. But the sentiment seems to be that that is the way he's leaning.
I'm glad you brought up that whole maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't thing, because then this question will make sense to you. Do you think he understands the implications of doing this? Like, have we had any indication that he's talked about the implications of doing this? Because I've been looking for that, and I'm not seeing it.
I'm sure he has gamed it out with his aides, but with Trump, you never really know what he understands and what he doesn't. Because I think that his preferred outcome would be that, you know, he sends in these bombers, they take out that facility, and then it's all over, and maybe the Iranians sue for peace. But of course, you could also see a situation where things spiral downward into more and more American involvement. You know, what the Iranians have said is that if the U.S. attacks them, that they are going to retaliate against U.S. interests in the region, and perhaps that could include terrorist attacks against civilians. And what happens if Iran then kills Americans? Then there's going to be huge pressure for the U.S. to retaliate again. And you could certainly see how we could get sucked in to a widening conflict. And it might not be a full-scale invasion like we did with Iraq back in 2003, but it could be something much more than just some bombing. And so, this situation could get out of his control, even though I'm sure what he would like is something clean. And, I think a lot of people believe falsely that he's an isolationist. That's not really true. He doesn't like multilateralism. He wants to just act on his own. But he also likes to just, lob off some bombs or missiles and have it be done with it. So he doesn't get us, mired in the kind of thing we were for so long in Iraq and Afghanistan. But it's not easy to keep a lid on things once you start that ball rolling.
What is the thinking among nuclear experts in the meantime about whether or not Iran is actually close to producing a bomb?
Well, I think you have to start by answering what it was a week ago. The consensus seems to be that they had enriched uranium far past what they would need for civilian use, but we're not quite where you would need it to be to build nuclear bombs, but that they probably could do it in relatively short order. That had they made the decision that they wanted to build bombs, it would be a matter of probably months for them to get that going and enrich to the point that they would need, but that they hadn't actually made that decision and they hadn't gone there yet. That's the consensus of nuclear experts, American intelligence. So that was where they were a week ago. Now, where they are now, it's a little harder to tell because, we're in the chaos of war, and Israel has destroyed some of their facilities or at least damaged them. But you could also see how, from this point, depending on what they still have in their possession, that Iran could make a rational decision to say, to protect ourselves, we need a nuclear bomb. After all, nobody is attacking North Korea, and that's because they have nukes. And Iran might say, well, this is the only thing that's going to protect us, so we better get it going. We don't know if they're going to say that to themselves, and we don't know what capacity they will have after this is all over, or as the Israeli bombing goes on. But it just shows that there's a lot of uncertainty about where we could end up. But Israel, they are in this for the long haul, and I think that's important context too. This was not an impulsive decision on Israel's part. They had been planning this attack for a long time. And it's been very comprehensive. It's got not just airstrikes, but assassinations of Iranian military leaders, cyber attacks, and they are fully prepared to keep this up for weeks or even months in order to destroy what they believe is the Iranian nuclear program.
Paul, thank you for walking us through the details. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks.
That is a Paul Waldman, columnist for MSNBC. We reached him this morning in Washington, D.C. The latest on CBC on this is coming up here at 7 o'clock. So it's 3 minutes now to World Report and the latest in national and international news. Let's dip into what's happening locally here. Heather Wells is here with an update on our local news with her headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, community members are grappling with destruction in Burge Lake Provincial Park. More than 24 properties burned to the ground as wildfire ripped through that area. Paul Grimmer is the chief of the fire department in nearby Lynn Lake. His summer home was among the buildings lost. He says it looks like a bomb went off in the park. And that escalating conflict between Israel and Iran has people from those communities in Canada watching anxiously. We're going to hear some local voices in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In addition to that story about the cabins around Lynn Lake, we'll hear more about it coming up after 7 o'clock on our program as well. Also at 7:40, something different here. After decades of being a major bus route in Winnipeg, Graham Avenue is about to see a major change, and this is part of the big transit changes. But we're going to hear from some of the people that are helping to give it a major facelift. And spoiler alert, they're attached to Tech Voc High School. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about that. Also, Mayor Gillingham is going to be here, Mayor Scott Gillingham, for our monthly interview. We're going to talk to him about a report on a possible Wellington Crescent bike lane that has been delayed again. There's some frustration in the community about that. We also are going to discuss with the mayor what is happening with homelessness in the city. Heather had one of the stories in the news this morning about a person who'd been homeless for the last 4 years and is hoping to get a roof over his head. So he's been in an encampment. So what is the challenge there in terms of getting people out of those encampments? As, of course, it's been a provincial strategy. Pardon me, she's been in an encampment. So stay tuned. That is coming up with Mayor Gillingham, coming up in the next hour of the show. Right now, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg, 15. Winds are calm. Our high today, 24. With humidex, it'll feel like 27. It should be clearing this morning and then clear tonight. But we do have a 60% chance of showers late tonight and overnight. Right now, Brandon, cloudy 12, and Thompson's mainly sunny and -1. As far as the commute, the lights have been flashing red in all directions at Osborne and Broadway. Now, crews were on the way to get the lights up and running. They likely have arrived by now. If there's any change through that region, through that area, Winnipeg, please call Sierra at 788-3093. That is our commuter line. Right now, let's get to World Report. It's 1 minute to 7. You're on CBC. Stay with us.
Today on The Current.
High schoolers across Canada are finishing up exams, but they're writing fewer of them than they used to, and some aren't doing any at all.
Gentlemen, tell you what, not just tear out that page, tear out the entire introduction. I want it gone.
Some experts say exams are not a good way to measure learning. Others say that they build students' strength. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Angie Seth. Emergency services in Israel say dozens of people have been injured by a barrage of Iranian missiles. A hospital was hit this morning. Israel's defense minister responded by ordering the military to intensify strikes on Iran. Already today, Israel has been targeting a nuclear site in the Iranian city of Arak. The CBC's Chris Brown is in Jerusalem following those developments.
From Jerusalem, the white trails of Iranian missiles could be seen flying overhead. At least one struck Tel Aviv's Ramat Gan neighborhood in the middle of a commercial district. But the most serious damage appeared to be to the south, in Beersheba, where the Soroka hospital almost took a direct hit. There was extensive damage to several floors. In a statement, Iran claimed there was an Israeli military intelligence operation next door to the hospital, its intended target. Israeli politicians called hitting the hospital a war crime, but its military has used nearly identical justifications for bombing hospitals and other civilian buildings in Gaza. Meanwhile, in Iran, Israel says its planes knocked out an inactive nuclear reactor used to make heavy water, saying it was to ensure the facility couldn't come online again.
We'll plan for everything, but we'll see what happens. We've got a ways to go.
The biggest question remains, what does the United States and its unpredictable president plan to do next? Donald Trump is being urged by Israel and some in his party to attack Iran's deep underground nuclear complex at Fordo, while other Republicans, Democrats, and most world leaders are urging him not to get directly involved in the war. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The prospect of U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran conflict is also putting Britain's Prime Minister in a delicate position. Keir Starmer is urging diplomacy and de-escalation. But as Anna Cunningham tells us, he's also bracing to get dragged into the conflict.
Britain is weighing up where it would stand if the US decides to get directly involved in Israel's strikes on Iran. David Lammy, the British Foreign Secretary, will hold talks with Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, later in Washington. Those discussions could prove crucial. The US has reportedly moved bombers to a joint military base it shares with the UK in Diego Garcia, an archipelago in the Indian Ocean. It's unclear if they include the B-2 stealth bombers that carry the 30,000-pound heavy bunker buster bombs needed to destroy an underground nuclear site deep in the mountains of Fordo in Iran.
We could do it. We could do it very easily.
Says Katie McFarland, a former US National Deputy Security Advisor. She says US President Donald Trump is not talking about a wider war.
Any of the people who say, well, Iran is going to retaliate, with what?
But if the US wants to launch strikes on Iran from the joint base in the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, or from the UK's base in Cyprus, then Trump would need the permission of the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
The idea of a negotiated solution doesn't sound to me very credible.
Says John Sawyer, former chief of Britain's secret intelligence service MI6.
I don't think just destroying the nuclear facilities destroys the regime. This is not like Syria.
The next 48 hours could be pivotal. Friday, British, German and French foreign secretaries are scheduled to meet with their Iranian counterpart for direct talks in Geneva. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Prisoners at a facility in Kingston, Ontario are not taking advantage of their supervised consumption site. Since 2023, they have been able to use drugs there without fear of being charged. But so far, prisoners are hesitant to visit. Dan Takama has more on what's stopping people from using the service.
Inside the Collins Bay institution is an amnesty zone where inmates can inject, snort, or swallow drugs smuggled into the prison, all with a nurse on standby. But more than a year and a half after it opened, the site has mostly sat empty.
We've had one active user.
It's called an overdose prevention service, one of 5 operating across Canada at prisons in Alberta, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Ontario. Matthew Secord is manager of health and rehabilitation at Collins Bay.
There's always going to be a bit of a level of distrust, especially with a novel program such as this.
But a University of Ottawa professor says that's not the only problem.
There's just too many barriers right now.
Lynn Leonard completed independent evaluations of the sites and says those barriers include the rising popularity of smoking crystal meth, which isn't allowed at the sites, and daytime operating hours while inmates prefer to get high at at night. There's another obstacle, too.
The minute you open the door there, you're identifying yourself as somebody with substances.
A former Collins Bay inmate who CBC has agreed not to identify says openly using drugs leads to unwanted attention from correctional officers and fellow inmates.
It might bring heat onto me.
Staff at Collins Bay say they plan to work with the inmate committee and health liaisons to highlight what the site offers in hopes of encouraging people to use it. Dan Takama, CBC News, Kingston, Ontario.
Just 2 major airlines operate in Canada, and a new report says that is hurting the country's commercial aviation industry. The Competition Bureau suggests opening Canadian airlines up to foreign ownership could help new companies enter the market. Philippe de Montigny has more.
Air Canada and WestJet continue to dominate Canadian skies, with up to 3/4 of the domestic market. In its latest report, the Competition Bureau is calling for Ottawa to relax its rules around foreign ownership of airlines. More competition, it says, would boost service and lower ticket prices. But such a change comes at a cost, according to aviation expert John Graddick.
The decisions that are going to be made by those carriers may not be in the best interest of Canadians. And that to me is too high a risk.
The Competition Bureau also suggests limiting the Transport Minister's power to greenlight mergers, citing a few examples like the marriage between WestJet and Sunwing, which was approved by Ottawa despite the Competition Commissioner's concerns. The watchdog also wants to review the business model of airports to increase access for new airlines and reduce those hefty airport fees, which customers end up paying about 30 cents on the dollar. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Workers board up commercial buildings in Acapulco as they prepare for Hurricane Eric. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says it just made landfall in Mexico's western state of Oaxaca. The NHC says Eric lost some strength. The hurricane was downgraded from a powerful Category 4 storm to a Category 3. Forecasters say right now Eric is bringing winds topping 205 kilometers per hour. A group of top climate scientists, meantime, is warning the world could breach its warming limit in as little as 3 years, putting the global target of capping warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius in jeopardy. The new study from more than 60 researchers says the rate of heating is concerning. It has been 25% higher than a decade ago. The ocean absorbs most of this excess heat, and that causes sea levels to rise and increases the risk of flooding. But scientists say new clean technologies can help and that rapid emissions cuts are more important than ever. Well, today is Juneteenth, the day when Americans commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. Black people have celebrated Juneteenth going back to 1866, but it is relatively new as a federal holiday. And as Steve Futterman reports, fewer companies are sponsoring Juneteenth events in this new Trump era.
It was with great fanfare in 2021 that U.S. President Joe Biden announced renewed recognition for Juneteenth.
This is a day of which we remember the moral stain that slavery took on the country.
It would now be a federal holiday. Since then, the commemorations have grown. But this year, there's been a significant change. Many events have seen corporate funding dry up. Norman Harris runs the Juneteenth Music Festival in Denver.
We started to hear from them late March, early April.
He won't name names, but among corporations missing this year are Amazon and Verizon. A lot of it may have to do with Donald Trump, who has put pressure on corporations to discontinue DEI programs.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
In San Diego, Lana Cooper and her family have organized Juneteenth events going back to the 1950s. But this year, for their celebration, Target stores pulled out. Cooper blames the Trump White House.
It is America's history, and it needs to be told, and it needs to be shared.
And on the White House schedule for today, there is nothing acknowledging Juneteenth. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Angie Seth. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC. Live from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. 15 degrees in the city. Well, this hour on the program, we'll have a conversation with Mayor Scott Gillingham. It is our monthly interview with the mayor, and we have a lot on the table. Like, who is Joseph Dunford? He has been nominated to be Winnipeg's new Chief Administrative Officer. As you can hear, we're still learning his name. And why is the mayor backing him? So stay tuned for that. We'll also ask him about the homelessness strategy, the houselessness strategy, and some people that are still living in encampments and saying they're eager to get out, and what the city's role is in that provincial strategy. So stay tuned for all of that and more. Also this hour on the program, after decades of being a major bus route in Winnipeg, Graham Avenue is about to see a major change. One of them is to convert that transit hub into a pedestrian corridor, and some students from Tech Lock are involved in that effort. So we're going to hear from them this hour. Right now, let's get into what's happening otherwise in the news with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, people living in a homeless encampment near the Disraeli say they want to move into housing, but so far, no one has offered them a place. The province launched a strategy earlier this year to buy up housing units as part of a plan to end chronic homelessness. Maxine Wood lives in a camp next to the Manitoba Federation, the Métis Federation building. She describes chaos and drugs. And police say they're investigating reports of a bicycle chop shop in those camps. So we'll hear more about that. And the province of Manitoba did not follow through on an urgent plan from 2023 to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. That story as well in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells live with us from our news center. Abby is here too, and let's find out about the weather today.
Good morning. Southern part of the province off to a warm start, though we have a mix of sun and clouds in play today. While the north is going to be staying cooler. It's going to be bright and calm up there. Winnipeg right now 15 degrees. The sun starting to peek through those clouds as we move through the morning. Those cloudy conditions will clear and we'll see sunny conditions and a warm afternoon. We'll see temperatures getting close to 24 degrees, but with the humidity factored in, it's going to be feeling like 27 this morning, and then some more clear conditions turn into cloudy conditions as we get overnight with the rain building. There's a chance of showers and thunderstorms later this evening into the overnight. We're seeing light showers in Gimli at this time with temperatures around 14 degrees and most of the regions close to 15 at this time. Up north, we're still seeing the cool part of the province where we have 6 to 12 degrees for the powerful influence and Thompson, including Churchill.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We do have updates, actually, in traffic to some things that have been developing this morning. So it's 7:13. Here's what's going on with Sierra.
Yes, so as we've been mentioning, the lights were flashing red in all directions at Osborne and Broadway. Crews have restored those lights, so things should be moving smoothly through there now. I also just got a call from Jill. She called to mention there's a truck without a wheel in the left lane at northbound St. Mary's at Dunraven. So that truck is stopped. It's stalled for now. And so for a little kind of visual there, that's just after the St. Anne's and St. Mary's intersection in Old St. Vital, where they kind of come together. So keep right to pass there. There's already some construction in that area, so there might be some more delays. Let me know if you have any updates in that area. And if there's anything slowing you down out there, be like Jill. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That's 204-788-3093.
7:14 a.m. is the time right now. Well, let's talk about the fire situation in this province. Now, I'm going to caution you because some of what I'm going to say is good news, but you do need to check the fire maps. You need to check the provincial websites to make sure that you know exactly where you're going in the province, what region you're in, and if this applies. Because the Manitoba Wildfire Service has updated the fire and travel restrictions to a lot of the parts of the province to a level 2, they're saying. This goes into effect at 8 o'clock this morning. So what it means is that some of the provincial burn permits are cancelled. So there are some changes to how we can behave and what we can do in the province. But in addition, we can confirm the south part of Nopaming Provincial Park has been now reopened for permanent residents. cottagers, and commercial operators. And that does include Provincial Road PR 315. Those changes are confirmed. So we're slowly looking at some things improving. Of course, Flin Flon, the largest city, people still evacuated from there. So those people still out of their homes. That's a bulk of people, some 5,000. And then you have been hearing in the news in the last 24 hours, there's also been a change. Chatasqueyac Cree Nation folks were told they could go back, but there's an issue with some of the infrastructure in their community. So now they've been pulled back and said, please wait. So lots of things changing out there. Meantime, we're starting to get a better picture of some of the places in Manitoba that we have actually had a hard time getting information about. One of them that I know in our news center we were eager to find out what happened, in and around the area was around Lynn Lake. And so as you've been hearing in the news this morning, the wildfires around that community have destroyed almost 30 properties. This is in Burge Lake Provincial Park. Some were cabins, others were permanent homes. They're all near the town of Lynn Lake. Now, firefighters continue to battle that massive wildfire. It is now more than 71,000 hectares. Winnipeg's, I think, about 46,000 hectares, just so you have a visual of how big this is. The cabin of Lynn Lake Fire Chief Paul Grimmer was among those that burned to the ground. Now, one of the only pieces that remains is the address marker. CBC's Gavin Axelrod spoke with Grimmer yesterday.
Yeah, it's just awful. It was such a beautiful park, and it was a really wonderful community. Lynn Lake has a pretty large, diaspora community, like people that grew up here, people that lived here and have had to move away over the years. And a lot of them maintained their cabins and would come back in the summer, and it was just a really, amazing community to be a part of. I had a cabin out there, and it was just a beautiful park, and now it looks like a bomb went off in the middle of it.
How long did you have your cabin there?
Probably 6 or 7 years at this point.
So sorry to hear about the loss. I can imagine, there's maybe some valuables and things like that you won't be able to get back.
For me, I'm less concerned about that, and I'm just kind of heartbroken for the community and the park. Most of the people I've talked to are pretty intent on rebuilding, but it's going to be a long time before green comes back, and it's a nice place to be visually. The cabin was just a summer residence. There were 3 people that lived out there full time. There were people that were out there year round, but maintained a house in town.
So only 3 of them were permanent residents?
Yeah.
How are they doing?
I haven't talked to them all yet. One of them, their cabin was one of the few that was spared. And then the other 2, I know one's a good friend of mine, and I know she's pretty devastated.
As fire chief, what's it been like for you just being out there on the front lines and fighting this huge fire?
It was almost unreal, when it hit town. We've had so many scares through the years, and they always, just skirt by. And so on the Sunday when they hit Burge, and then 2 days later it came back and hit town, and so it was hard enough to believe it hit Burge. That's just always been, it misses. That's the way it's always been, and it hit Burge, and that was just hard to believe. And then 2 days later it was back, and it was on top of the town, and we were fighting structure fires in town, and it felt like, that's not the way the story goes. It misses. It's supposed to miss, and it just didn't this time. It ran right over top of us.
What do you think it's going to be like, when people come back and have to see some of the damage that's happened?
I think people are going to be really sad. Lynn Lake's a pretty tight community. There's a whole bunch of people in this community that came here for a year for work or for whatever, and have been here I've been here for 11 years. There's been people that have been here for 20, 30 years that, we're only coming here for a year, and just the place, it gets into your, you just, I don't know. It's a place that you kind of love if you love it.
It is sobering to see what fire can do. That was CBC's Gavin Axelrod speaking about it with Lynn Lake Fire Chief Paul Grimmer, who also lost his own cabin up around Lynn Lake. Now, Crystal Antilla is a volunteer firefighter. She as well lost a cabin she's owned there since last year.
It was definitely really hard to see. It was very emotional. Obviously we had just gotten the news that our own cabin had burned down and was essentially a total loss. And then my local fire department, the RM of Springfield that I'm a volunteer with, got the call to go to the community and help with the ongoing forest fire situation there. So I was able to get into the community and see some of the destruction, the devastation firsthand. And it was a really emotional experience. I was fortunate in a way to be a part of those efforts. It was really meaningful to me, but at the same time, it was a difficult experience to see not only my own cabin gone, but the other properties that were affected too. The space is still there, and I have a lot of hope for rebuilding, and I hope that many other people do as well. But in the short time that we did have the cabin, it was a pretty meaningful place, and we had some great experiences fishing and hunting and other things in the area. So obviously that's going to be a huge loss to not have the area look the same way it does or it did. I'm going to miss all of the trees, all of the surroundings, that it doesn't look the same, and it won't for a really long time. But I do have a lot of hope that not only us, but other cabin and property owners in Burge Lake will rebuild. So I'm hoping that's the case. It's hard to say because it is still early, and most of those people haven't been able to get back and see what everything looks like in order to make those decisions. But the community of Lynn Lake is a really strong community, and the people are great people there. So I have no doubt that a lot of people will be putting in efforts to get their area, their cabins back to what they would have been before.
Crystal Antilla in conversation there with CBC's Gavin Axelrod. Her cabin in Burge Lake was destroyed by a wildfire. 7:22 a.m. Blue Rodeo is on a big tour. They're coming back to Winnipeg, city favorites. They're going to be here this fall in October. Here they are with Try on CBC.
Don't tell me I'm wrong, 'cause I've been watching every move that you made. Aren't you still in your makeup and heels? Trouble for the man that you take. Every time you walk in the room, never be sure of a smile. You were never the same way twice. I'm falling in love, oh, night after night. Oh, it's crazy. Ooh, so many people say, ooh, girl, got nothing but time. Oh,
you singing along? It's one of those tunes, right? I know every word. And I'm like, how do I know every word? Oh, yeah, because Blue Rodeo has been around for 40 years. They're on their tour this year. They're coming to Winnipeg. They're playing the Burt October 16th and 17th. Tickets are on sale actually right now if you're interested. It is 7:25 a.m. Let's get to morning sports. Claude Faig is in for Scott Regarrigan this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. Pretty good band. Yeah, they've done all right.
You think? Yeah, right? Just a little bit. Big favorites here in Manitoba. They always draw a nice crowd. Let's talk quarterbacks. They're top of the conversation as the Bombers get ready to have a rematch against BC on Saturday. And I can imagine what that looks like because, you know, Strevler was a different quarterback than many imagined when he led us to that win.
Yeah, Marcy. So the Bombers have a couple of more days of prep time before heading to BC for that rematch with the Lions on Saturday night. Bombers got the best of the Leos and their former coordinator, Buck Pierce, in a Week 1 34-20 win. Now, that win came with Chris Strevler at the controls, who tossed 3D passes in relief of Zach Collaros. Now, he was serving a one-game suspension for failing to respond to an off-season drug testing. Now, Collaros is now back and available for Saturday's game. And head coach Mike O'Shea asked about the prospect of Pierce game planning, knowing both quarterbacks pretty well.
I'm pretty sure Buck knows who our quarterbacks are. Plays are the plays. Our playbook's the playbook. Doesn't matter what league, what quarterback room, the coordinator, the quarterback coach are going to have a good understanding of what each guy likes. That plays into it more than changing a playbook. It's just... Here's our plays that we have worked through camp that we like. Each guy has, his own favorite, but it's not about paring it down or changing it.
And clearly, the Bombers got the best of Pierce and the Leos in Game 1. Collaros, though, is expected to start on Saturday.
Thunder on the cusp of an NBA title now led by a pair of Canadians.
Yeah, Marcy, so the Oklahoma City Thunder shoot for the franchise's first NBA title tonight since relocating from Seattle. They tip with the Pacers in Indiana, up 3-2 in the finals. Now, all Canadian eyes will be on Hamilton, Ontario's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Montreal's Lou Dort, two big pieces for the Thunder. Now, if they win, they would become just the 11th and 12th Canadians to have their name inscribed on the Larry O'Brien Trophy and to hoist it for that matter, but arguably the two most impactful players. Now, SGA could also become the first NBAer to claim the league MVP and win a championship in the same year since 2015 when Steph Curry, who at one time called Toronto home when his dad Dell played for the Raptors. Of course, he did it with Golden State. So what's SGA's approach?
The cusp of winning is not winning. And the way I see it, winning is all that matters. So it hasn't been fulfilling. We haven't done anything the way I see it. Ultimately, I'm just trying to stay in the moment. I think that's what's gotten me here. That's what's helped me achieve the MVP award, achieve all the things that I've achieved. And helped this team win basketball games. So trying to stick to that script and just focus on winning basketball games.
Now, tip time from Indiana tonight is about 7:30 local time.
And finally, the Sister Act is a big part of Brooke Henderson on the LGPA tour.
Yes, Marcy. So Brooke Henderson has run into a bit of a dry spell lately. She finished 6 shots off the pace at an LPGA event last weekend, but has her sights set on a major this weekend. She hasn't won a major since 2022. Now, she's undergone laser eye surgery to try and better her sight, but her sights on any event have always been set with her big sister Brittany alongside. She's been Brooke's caddy for 11 of Henderson's 12 career wins, and Brooke says she wouldn't want it any other way.
She's my best friend, which makes it super fun to experience all these amazing journeys out here together. Winning in 2016 here at this event, that was our first win together. So I feel like it was showing us that we could do it and we could do something really special together out here. And I just rely on her so much. It's so important to have somebody that you can trust, especially when the pressure's on and you need to make clutch decisions. So having her by my side has really made a huge difference.
And Marcy, certainly nothing like some family ties, and Brooke tees off a bit later this morning.
For her, I love my sister dearly, but we would fight all the way up the fairway, man.
I'm guessing there have been a couple of scuffles along the way. Just, what do you mean you wanted me to shoot with a 7? I wanted a 6-iron, but yes.
Mom always liked you better.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Take care, Claude. Thank you.
Okay, Marcy, have a great day.
Yeah, you too. That's Claude Faig with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is 15 degrees. We're warming up to 24, which is right on par for this time of year. Community members are grappling with destruction in Burge Lake Provincial Park. More than 24 properties burned to the ground as wildfire tore through that area. Paul Grimmer is the chief of the fire department in Lynn Lake. His summer home was among the buildings lost.
And it was just a really, amazing community to be a part of. I had a cabin out there, and it was just a beautiful park, and now it looks like a bomb went off in the middle of it.
Grimmer says despite the destruction, he and others are determined to rebuild and restore what has been lost. Meanwhile, the province says that fire near Lynn Lake is more than 70,000 hectares in size, and an evacuation order remains in place. Now, evacuees from another Northern First Nation who initially had been given a green light to go home will now have to wait at least another week. It comes over concerns with Tataskwiak Cree Nation's water treatment plant. Leadership says testing indicated high levels of aluminum in the water. Chief Doreen Spence says while experts assess that facility, evacuees should not return until the issues are resolved.
Being away from your community and your family and friends is obviously taking a toll on your health mentally. And, if you need help, you can reach out to any one of the council members here.
Spence says some essential services haven't resumed either, like healthcare or garbage pickup. A planned power outage is also scheduled over the next 5 days to repair hydrostructures damaged by the wildfire. Leadership says they have air purifiers and generators on hand for those who have already returned. The province of Manitoba declined to follow through on urgent plans to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. In 2023, the incoming NDP government was advised a consultant may be hired to conduct a forensic examination of the 2023 wildfire season. That consultant would also have looked at how well Manitoba was prepared to respond to the next wildfire season. That consultant was never hired. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says instead, internal assessments of the wildfire service were conducted in 2024 and this year.
Rather than going with an external kind of consultant, if you will, I think we have some very good people from within the departments that we want to be able to coordinate with and communicate with and take their advice as to how we stand up the department in a very good way.
PC leader Abi Khan says he's not convinced the internal assessments prepared Manitoba for this year's wildfires. People living in homeless camps along the Disraeli Freeway say they are waiting for housing. The province launched a strategy earlier this year to buy up housing units as part of a plan to end chronic homelessness. But some people who live in those camps tell CBC no one has come by to offer them housing. Maxine Wood has been homeless for 4 years and living in a camp next to the Manitoba Métis Federation building for about 2 months.
Even if we try to get a home, we can't. It's so hard. Like being here, it is so hectic. It's chaos around here because there's people that do drugs and so on. It's crazy.
A senior advisor to Premier Wab Kinew says outreach teams have visited that camp and are working on getting people into housing. But they say supply is limited because the previous government sold off many social housing units. Israeli officials call the Iranian missile strike on a hospital in southern Israel a war crime. An air raid siren as emergency response teams arrive on the scene. Dozens of people have been injured, with the hospital sustaining what is being called extensive damage. Also last night, Iranian missile strikes on a high-rise apartment building in Tel Aviv and on other sites in central Israel. As for the Israeli military, it continues targeting Iran's nuclear program and multiple military sites across the country. That escalating conflict has people from the communities, Israeli and Iranian, in Canada watching anxiously. Belle Jorneski at the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada says she spoke to a friend in Bat Yam, Israel, where an Iranian missile strike killed several people on Sunday.
What he's seeing and how shocking it is, it really hits home when it's someone that you know very well and when you've been there and seen the place. And it's very frightening.
Ariane Arianpour, the former president of the Iranian community of Manitoba, says he does not support the Islamic Republic's regime, but also doesn't like seeing Israeli airstrikes turning his country's infrastructure into, quote, rubble. Southern Mexico is bracing for the arrival of Hurricane Eric. Workers boarding up windows in the Mexican city of Acapulco. The storm has rapidly gained strength and now is an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. Forecasters expect it to bring destructive winds and to cause life-threatening flash floods over a wide area. It has been packing maximum sustained winds of up to 230 kilometers an hour. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8 and find the latest Manitoba news as always at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we don't have winds like that in our local forecast here today. Abby has those details.
The south is going to be warm and sunny. North stays cool, sunshine and calm conditions. Winnipeg, the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing temperatures around 15 degrees right now. Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, we're seeing temperatures hover between 12 and 14. And the PAR is at 12 degrees right now. Thompson is at 6, Churchill at 10 degrees. Most regions will be seeing a mix of sun and clouds, and temperatures in most of the regions will be in the 20s today. Winnipeg will warm up to 24 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders is here now with a commute update. Good morning.
Good morning. So Jill called earlier to say there was a truck without a wheel in the median lane at northbound St. Mary's at Dunraven. So that's just after the St. Anne's and St. Mary's intersection in Old St. Vital, where they kind of come together and they merge a little bit and just turn into St. Mary's. So keep kind of right or left to pass there. And there's already construction in that area, so expect some delays. Chris just called before I popped in here to mention that it is still there, so that might be there for a little bit. So expect some delays in that area. If there's something getting out in your way out there or slowing you down, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
You know why I'm distracted this morning? Okay, here's your camera, and people watching the show on YouTube, you got to check this out. Put your hand up like this. Show these people your nails. Sierra always has the best nails. What is on your nails? Do you always get art?
Sometimes I lean towards more solid color, or sometimes I will go for a little bit more intricate art. So I went a little bit more intricate. My nail artist Erica does a great job every single time. So
I'm glad you shouted her out. Are they like light pink with like a red flower?
So they're kind of like a light pink, and then they kind of have a little bit of a more floral design in kind of pinkish red on top. So it's like a little bit of a layer on the nail. So each nail kind of has a different design on it.
We always talk about what the members of our morning crew bring, right? So Albie always brings a cool kicks. He's like got impeccable.
He really does.
Impeccable runners. You and your nails, and then Corey Funk always shames us with his activities.
Maybe his flannels too.
I'm
kind of jealous about the flannels.
Maybe Corey's not so much the style. Corey's more the biking into work, even like when it's minus 40.
Oh my goodness.
Doing like 100K runs and all of that. But
couldn't be me.
Yeah, no, me neither. So, but. Very, very nice. And there's a lot of artists around town that are great at that.
Yeah, she does such a good job. And I see some of her other stuff. She one time did nails that looked like stained glass. It was so cool.
Pretty. Feels summery, too.
Exactly.
We're getting to that first official day of summer. Thank you, Sierra.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things you might notice if you're out and about this year and in the summertime is a big change at one of Winnipeg's probably most busy bus stops, or at least it had been. We're talking about the Graham Avenue corridor. There's big change coming there this summer because starting at the end of this month, the buses are going to be moving off of Graham and they're going to be moving on to Portage. This is all part of the massive Winnipeg Transit reorganization. The plan is to make Graham Avenue more focused on pedestrians. One of the parts of that makeover is a whole group of new benches. They're being made by Tech Flock High School students in their welding shop. CBC's Jim Agapito went for a visit.
You're going to hold this here, we'll see how it looks. I'm Tony Bage, I'm the welding teacher here at Tech Flock High School.
What do you call this exactly?
We just call them city boxes for Graham Street, the Graham Street City Box Project.
How many of these did you make?
We made 40 of them. We made 40 of them all together. I think there's going to be 4 of these benches going downtown. So we made just square boxes that are designed to lock together, kind of like a Lego, and then it's a special metal. It's called Core 10 metal. So it's over time, it's going to have a nice natural patina to it. So downtown, they wanted it to look rustic, so that's the steel we went with, and then just a wood top. This is just the Core 10 steel. There was a jig that we made that put it together, tacked it all together. And then these fine young gentlemen here, they did the vertical down welding, butt welds.
What was the process like to get involved? Because obviously there's collaboration there between the city, the school, yourself, so tell me about that.
Well, my vice principal approached me with an architect that was in charge of it, and they threw out some ideas. We collaborated with what would work, what wouldn't work, and came up with some nice ideas.
Get it nice and even all the way around?
Well, first of all, when they saw the designs, they couldn't even figure out what the heck it was, so I had to kind of draw something to make, okay, this is what it's going to look like. We asked the architect for another picture, so they got an idea. Okay, now because they just thought it was just a metal box, but when they saw the end product, they got really excited. And as we were putting them together, we came across, certain issues that we had to figure out to make it work better. So that was a good learning thing for the students, how engineering, designing works. Here, the instruction part of it was just, they already knew the welding processes, so it was just getting them to work together as a team and then see the benefit of it after.
Hi, my name is Chris Manis. I go to Tech Block. I'm 17 years old, and I'm in welding. So first we started off with the metal, and we plasma cut it to make the squares into the boxes. And then when we aligned it and we tacked them together, and then we had some of our guys just weld them all together and get it not perfect, but as close to perfect as we can. And then we grinded it down, made it look smooth, so we could align them up together and make the benches. It honestly makes me feel great knowing that my people are represented throughout the city and that these will be a part of it. Those other 7 teachings on there, we want that to represent that it's Canada and that lots of people here are First Nations. It's exciting because in 10, 20 years, I'll be able to tell my kids, maybe even my grandkids, that I helped make those benches and I put that there.
My name is Jacob Ironstand Scott. I'm 16 and I'm a welding student here at Tech Block High School. I was pretty stoked that I was going to be making something for the city of Winnipeg. The group who did it, we had to practice numerous times on vertical down welding, and it kind of took some time to get it right and the right speed and the right temperature to do it so we don't burn right through the material. It feels very special that not only the 7 teachings are getting acknowledged, but that Indigenous students get to do it here at Tech Block.
They're going to be able to go downtown and they're going to be able to see this project for hopefully, a very long time. They'll be able to show their friends, hey, we worked on that. I'm just proud of them and they've come this far. A lot of them are grade 12 students will be graduating. So this is a perfect year-end project for them.
So that was CBC's Jim Agapito at Tech Block School in Winnipeg. The city plans to unveil, by the way, the finished Graham benches on June 28th. That's just in time for the students' graduation.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
7:43, you're on CBC locally here in Manitoba, live from downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, speaking of staying in the know and speaking of things changing quickly, the last time the mayor of the city of Winnipeg was in studio here for our monthly interview was, a month ago. But can you even imagine, because I looked back up at our conversation at that time, how much has changed in just 4 weeks. We were just starting that day with, the state of emergency in the province and talking about what this might look like and where might people stay once they came south. And now here we are. We're actually going to start there because the mayor had an interesting experience that's somewhat tied to the wildfires yesterday. Good morning, Scott Gillingham.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so what were you doing yesterday?
Yesterday, I hosted the folks from 17 Wing, CFB 17 Wing, at my office. About 40 or 50 of them came. I invited them to celebrate the CFB's 100th anniversary. So Canadian Forces Base Winnipeg has been in Winnipeg for a century now and such an important part of our community. But it was also an opportunity for me to thank the Royal Canadian Air Force for the just outstanding work they have done in the evacuation. Our Air Force has flown hundreds and hundreds of flights out of northern Manitoba into southern Manitoba and into Ontario to help evacuees, to rescue people from their communities that have had to flee for evacuation. And so I know that we've had, obviously, the province of Manitoba and the Red Cross and so many many agencies on the front line doing great work. But let's not forget the men and women of our Royal Canadian Air Force who have just stepped up and in the thick of things have done just remarkable work to help fellow Canadians.
Just briefly before we leave the wildfire situation, I know that this information is out there publicly, but some of the arenas and spaces and the Leela complex for soccer and will, I understand, still be somewhat on standby this summer just in case things change with wildfires. Is that right? Because you had to cancel some city programming. That was the agreement made to help with evacuee space.
Yeah. Last night I did hear that of the 4 city facilities, 3 arenas and the Leela soccer complex that we have provided to the province of Manitoba for evacuation, 2 of those are no longer needed. They still need to be kind of decommissioned right now, but programming will resume at a couple of them. I believe, though, for example, the Leela soccer complex will still be used for evacuation, so that's not one of them. But 2 of the 3 facilities, and we'll get more details out today, will be the regular programming will return shortly.
Okay. Can you name those 2 facilities, or are you still confirming all that?
We're just confirming all that right now. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move into some other stories. One of them that's in the news this morning. We actually we have a bit of a longer piece of tape and video if you're watching the show this morning to play you, Mayor Gillingham, because we had heard quite an extensive story about someone who's living homeless in our community. So here's a few minutes of Maxine Wood.
So how long have you been here in this camp?
I would say almost 2 months.
And how long, I guess, have you been homeless?
For about 4 years. But there's no housing for Native people around. Even if we try to get a home, we can't. It's so hard. It's crazy. Once I started camping, my nephews and them were telling me, let's go camping. And I said, why don't you just go on ahead and I'll follow you. So then I did. And you know what? More people of my friends and family are coming to me, and they're setting up tents here too. You see the tents around here?
Are these your relatives here?
Relatives and friends, and they're all homeless. It's really sad to see that. And it's getting worse. Being here, it is so hectic. It's chaos around here.
What happens around here?
Because there's people that do drugs and so on. It's crazy. People talking to themselves. And if we don't make a change in this environment, you know what? It's going to continue. These people are going to end up being vegetables on account of the meth and what do you call that, down. It's so sad to see that.
And the province has people, teams going around and trying to help people move out of camps and into housing. Has anybody been by to talk to you in this camp?
I have a worker, but he's sick right now. His name is Greg, and he's been sick. I've been working with him for 2 years now, and so hard to find a place still. It's crazy. Yeah.
So that was, as I said, Mayor Gillingham, Maxine Wood. She lives in this encampment. It's at the base of the Disraeli Freeway. This is in front of the MMF building. She's there with 19 other people, and that was CBC's Cam McLean talking to her just outside her tent. So if you're watching the video, you can see her tent and her tarp there. So she's been homeless for 4 years. There's encampments like that all over the city. I don't have to tell you this. You know this. I think people are hearing the provincial strategy. They're seeing that there's a desire to end chronic houselessness in the city, but they might not feel like they're seeing the results that they're still hoping for. Where are we at? What do you say to that?
Maxine's story is all too common. And the choke point, Marcy, is housing. There is not enough housing right now in our city. And the Your Way Home strategy that the province has rolled out is a good strategy. As the City of Winnipeg, we are fully on board and fully supportive and a partner in that strategy. Traditionally, the province of Manitoba has provided the housing, and they're working, I can assure you, from what I've heard and seen, that they're working very hard as a province to try to identify, find, and renovate, build more housing so that we can get people like Maxine out of an encampment and into housing as quickly as possible. The City of Winnipeg, we're beyond just cleaning up encampments. That's part of our role in the Your Way Home strategy. Is once an encampment is, people are moved out of an encampment and into housing, We'll go in and we'll clean up that site. But we've gone beyond that. We've stood up what we call land enhancement office, where we are identifying city-owned property that we can declare surplus and make that available for housing. We've recently identified 6 properties that we've made available, and organizations are bidding on that housing. And what they're doing is they're required to build affordable housing, and even in cases, if possible, deeply affordable housing, so that we can get people like Maxine off of the street, off of a campsite, and into housing.
So those 6 sites you mentioned that you've identified for developers, are they places that have to be torn down and then housing is rebuilt all the time, or are there any existing sites? Because the key to, I guess, making things more swift is to find places that are either vacant right now that need minor renovation that you can move people into quickly.
It's a bit of both. Certainly, there are some places where there's buildings that need to be demolished, but also, part of the big changes that we made to our zoning. And the big zoning reforms that we made in the last and adopted last week, or like a couple weeks ago now, that's all part of getting more housing built faster, removing some of the hurdles and requirements for those that would build to make it easier. People can build as of right. And so, yes, some of that is market, it'll help market and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
But,
is
right
some
now
of that for people like that would be in those lower income categories, or that would be coming out of encampments?
Well, in some of the cases, it may well be. If a site qualifies for now as of right building, people can build faster.
But we don't have anyone on the books right now that's in that situation that would be building at that lower level. That more entry level.
On those 6 sites?
No, the 6 sites, yes, but that is accessing sort of the fact that the zoning rules have been changed. That I understand is more accelerating infill in the city right now.
That's accelerating infill, but it could benefit those that are nonprofits, for example, that are building this kind of housing that would help people get off the street and into housing.
I know that one of the other things, just before we leave housing here, on Main Street where we had the hotel burned down, the Sutherland. I hope I have that right. I always mix up sometimes my hotels. Where it burned down, there's an operation from BC coming in, and they actually are rebuilding. They were always planning to renovate,
yes,
but now they are actually going to be rebuilding sort of a brand new place that's going to be for people in housing. That's what they do in BC. They're a nonprofit. Yeah. So do we have other partnerships like that in the city with other organizations from away that have been in the business of sort of doing this in their provinces, and that's also part of the solution, or are we seeking more of those partnerships?
Yeah, the folks, we're always looking for partnerships. Absolutely. The folks from BC, yes, they do that. Whether or not we have anyone from outside of Manitoba similar to those that organization from BC or not, I don't know. But I do know there's some people even internally. For example, it wasn't that long ago, Silo Mission, they have a capital plan and program as well to build housing. That's why when the city of Winnipeg, when we're working hard to draw down as much federal money as possible, whether it's a housing accelerator fund or the affordable housing fund, which needs to be replenished by the federal government, all of those incentives are important for especially nonprofits to be building the kind of housing that Maxine needs. And this is really, at the end of the day, about us trying to get housing built as quick as we can. It's not happening fast enough. I don't see anyone, or I haven't heard of anyone who is satisfied with the speed at which it's moving, but we're working hard to make it happen.
So just last, because I have other topics I want to get to, but you left me something hanging there. You said we need that to be replenished by the federal government. Mm-hmm. Is this a Prime Minister Mark Carney now in place? You don't have a guarantee that money's going to flow, or is there a worry there?
No. On that, there's several funds. One's called the Affordable Housing Fund. That has been fully subscribed. Okay. There's a couple of projects in the city of Winnipeg that have both housing accelerator funding as part of their funding model, but also the affordable housing now. There's so many of them. Affordable housing fund as well. That has been fully subscribed. There was some concern that money may not be available. My office has reached out to the federal housing minister, Gregor Robertson. We have sent an email. His office replied back that they're aware that fund is important, and they're looking for ways to make sure that money is available for all the projects.
And I did just look up the Sutherland Hotel. I was trying to remember, which was the most recent. There's been a lot of fires, unfortunately, on Main Street, but that was the Sutherland in January just this year, of course, that burned. Let's talk about Wellington Crescent between Academy and Stradbrook. Let's talk about cycling. As you know, people are frustrated that the city's report on building bike lanes there is delayed a second time. We talked to Michael. We agreed to not publish his last name. We talked to him last week. This is the day before the report was delayed again. Here's just a bit of what he said.
I'm just so mad. They'll delay for 2 years in building the dang thing, and that same night they find the time to come and tear it down. Like, if they actually cared about keeping people safe, they'd be building something instead. We're asking for the city to actually take action. Tomorrow they're going to be allowing yet another delay. I certainly would love it if my employer allowed me to not deliver something for months and months and months and have no repercussions.
Okay, so clearly he's frustrated. He's talking about the bike lane that they put up, that the city promptly came and said this isn't safe and took it down. Why is it taking so long? Why the delays to have something more permanent built there in terms of a bike lane around Wellington?
Well, we have to get it right. And so it's much better, in my mind, to take an extra few weeks to get the report right, so council and the public can have a good debate on the report and what's being recommended as far as Wellington Crescent goes. And so sometimes things take longer. I can appreciate that it's frustrating for folks, but it's better that we have the right report and get it right.
Is there a way to speed up the process? Reports from civil servants on important infrastructure in our city that people are invested in. Like, is there a way to get that moving quicker?
Well, sometimes, our public service has, we as a council ask them for a lot of reports, and our city hall's a report-based system. We ask them for a lot of information, a lot of reports, and sometimes it will take 6 months to beyond to get a report. And in some cases, we ask them to turn it around in 60 or 90 days, which means that our people within departments have to put everything else on hold to focus on this one area, this one matter, and get the report turned around quickly. This is something that the Wellington Crescent cycling lane and safety on Wellington Crescent is something we take very, very seriously. I have said we need to look at what we do for infrastructure there, for cycling infrastructure, to make sure pedestrians and cyclists are safe. We also need to bear in mind that that's an area of residents, and I think the residents need to have a say in this as well.
Just last really briefly, because I know Heather's already here with headlines, but Portage and Main, we're getting close to the opening date. Still on track for...
On track,
July
on budget.
1st, 2nd?
Oh, no, June 27th.
There.
June 27th.
So
yes, there we go. Target date is June 27th. And we're going to hold a media event. It won't be a big party, but it is a street opening.
You're not putting a huge ribbon across that sucker and getting out there with, garden shears or something?
I don't know if there'll be a ribbon or not. There will be a media event, but, as I've said all along, Portage and Main, it's important to Winnipeg's history. It's important to our future. But as I've said all along, at the end of the day, it's just an intersection.
June 27th, it'll open. Thank you very much, Mayor Gillingham.
Thank you.
That is Scott Gillingham, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg. Here now is Heather Wells with headlines.
Good morning. Well, community members are grappling with destruction in Burge Lake Provincial Park. More than 24 properties burned to the ground as wildfire ripped through that area. Paul Grimmer, chief of the fire department in nearby Lynn Lake, says it looks like a bomb went off in the park. The province of Manitoba, meanwhile, did not follow through on urgent plans from 2023 to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. After the provincial election, the incoming NDP government was advised of plans to hire a consultant to conduct a forensic examination of the 2023 wildfire season. That consultant was never hired. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Mostly cloudy, 15 degrees in Winnipeg. Winds are calm. The high 24. It's going to be sticky again with humidex at 27. And tonight we could see a 60% chance of showers for us, so that might develop. On your morning commute, we have had a couple of things developing. There is a truck without a wheel on the median lane at northbound St. Mary's at Dunraven. That's just after that St. Anne St. Mary's intersection, Old St. Vital. So you're going to have to get around that. So there's already construction there. You can expect a little bit of delay. 788-3093 if you do need to reach us. Please give us a call on the commuter line. Stay with us. World Report's next.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Oscar winner Domi Shi has made a new animated movie called Elio.
Hi, Dad. I'm a bargaining chip. No, say the other thing. Oh, help me, Father. Quiet, you.
It's a story about an oddball 11-year-old who dreams of getting abducted by aliens. But as you'll hear, it's really a film about how we navigate loneliness.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current. with Matt Galloway.
High schoolers across Canada are finishing up exams, but they're writing fewer of them than they used to, and some aren't doing any at all. Some experts say exams are not a good way to measure learning. Others say that they build students' strength. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Angie Seth. Israel's defense minister says Iran's supreme leader, quote, cannot be allowed to exist. Israel Katz is reacting to a strike by Iran that hit an Israeli hospital. That attack injured dozens. The latest round of strikes comes at a critical time for the Middle East, as U.S. President Donald Trump is deciding whether to prioritize diplomacy or to send in the U.S. military. The CBC's Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with more.
From Jerusalem, the white trails of Iranian missiles could be seen flying overhead. At least one struck Tel Aviv's Ramat Gan neighborhood in the middle of a commercial district. But the most serious damage appeared to be to the south, in Beersheba, where the Soroka hospital almost took a direct hit. There was extensive damage to several floors. In a statement, Iran claimed there was an Israeli military intelligence operation next door to the hospital, its intended target. Israeli politicians called hitting the hospital a war crime, but its military has used nearly identical justifications for bombing hospitals and other civilian buildings in Gaza. Meanwhile, in Iran, Israel says its planes knocked out an inactive nuclear reactor used to make heavy water, saying it was to ensure the facility couldn't come online again.
We'll plan for everything, but we'll see what happens. We've got a ways to go.
The biggest question remains, what does the United States and its unpredictable president plan to do next? Donald Trump is being urged by Israel and some in his party to attack Iran's deep underground nuclear complex at Fordo, while other Republicans, Democrats, and most world leaders are urging him not to get directly involved in the war. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The federal government is making a final push to pass legislation that would speed up approval for major industrial projects. The Liberals introduced Bill C-5 to strengthen Canada's economy in the face of U.S. tariffs, but some First Nations leaders say the legislation should not receive royal assent yet. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, they want the Governor-General to address their concerns first.
I think we always have to make sure that we protect our democracy in this country, and I think that it's not being protected. Things are being rammed through.
National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak is speaking to any parliamentarian she can this week about concerns the Assembly of First Nations has with the federal government's major projects bill, legislation to build infrastructure and energy projects more quickly. Now she's calling on Mary Simon, the first Indigenous Governor-General, to intervene.
I'm sure she's got powers to, talk to government about slowing things down, doing things in a good way.
It's her responsibility to hear us.
Anishinaabe Aski Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler represents 49 First Nations in Northern Ontario. He wants the Governor-General to arrange a meeting to address their worries. He says the legislation gives Ottawa sweeping powers that could trample treaty rights and harm the environment.
And she is the Crown representative, and I think she should be involved.
University of Alberta law professor Eric Adams says Simon can consult, but she can't interfere in the political process.
She has to be mindful that she's not looking like she's taking particular sides.
In a statement, Rito Hall told CBC News all questions on legislation in development should be directed to the government. The major projects bill is expected to pass this Friday with Conservative support. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meantime, several Ontario First Nations chiefs are meeting with Premier Doug Ford today. They're upset with similar legislation to fast-track infrastructure projects in that province. Bill 5 became law in Ontario earlier this month. The leaders say they feel the government is ignoring their concerns about the bill's proposed mining developments. Ford says he's willing to give the leaders what they want, provided they show support for the mining projects. Well, the family of a missing Quebec girl is breathing a sigh of relief this morning. 3-year-old Claire Bell was found alive yesterday near the Ontario-Quebec border. But her mother, facing a charge of child abandonment, is still in custody, awaiting another court appearance. Jalen Bernstein has more on the story.
after a multi-day search. It was a tip from the public that led police to Claire Bell. A witness told police she saw the missing girl and her mom in eastern Ontario on Sunday afternoon. Ontario Provincial Police joined the effort, deploying a drone. And that bird's eye view is how they found the 3-year-old girl. She was alone along a major highway near St. Albert, Ontario. She was weak, but able to talk. OPP Sergeant Sean Cameron says her rescue was an emotional moment.
You know, it's one of the reasons we become police, right? Police officers is to have days like this. A lot of the days, there aren't great outcomes. We are parents, us too, right?
According to information provided to Radio-Canada, the 3-year-old girl had a lunchbox with her. She told officers, "I'm waiting for my mom. She told me to wait." Quebecers had been following the case closely, and their collective relief was captured by Premier François Legault.
We worried about the results, but it's almost a miracle.
Police aren't saying how she survived for 3 nights. Their investigation is still ongoing. The girl's mom, Rachel Ella Todd, remains in custody. She was charged with child abandonment earlier in the week. Claire's dad posted on Instagram thanking everyone for their help and asking to be left to spend this time with his daughter and family. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Yukon's Liberal Party will choose its next leader later today, and that person will become the territory's next premier. Outgoing Premier Ranj Pillai announced earlier this year he would not seek re-election, so party members will today cast a ballot for either Doris Bill, a former Kwanlundun First Nation chief, or Mike Pemberton, a local businessman. The next territorial election must be held on or by November the 3rd. Right now, the Liberals hold a minority government in Yukon's legislature. Last fall, we brought you the story of some Filipino workers in Canada as part of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. They say they're underpaid and poorly treated working retail jobs at a Canadian Tire in Ontario. Allegations the store owner, however, denies. They also told CBC they paid thousands of dollars to another company to be placed in those positions. Now that company has been ordered to repay, but it says it is appealing. Shayna Luck has that story.
I'm so happy and teary-eyed. Finally, we got justice.
Roel Pailan's reaction to an Ontario Labour Ministry decision ordering he be repaid more than $10,000. He told CBC he paid that money to an Alberta company to get work at an Ontario Canadian Tire, not knowing that's illegal in Canada. An Ontario Labour Ministry officer investigated 2 companies, Allison Jones Consulting and AJ Immigration Group, and concluded they were working together and charged Pailan unlawful fees. They have the same owner and operate from the same address in Alberta. But Allison Jones Consulting argued it was paid by Canadian Tire to do worker recruitment, while AJ Immigration says it was paid by workers for immigration services. Both services are legal on their own, but it isn't legal for a recruiter to charge a foreign worker for a job placement. The company's owner, Allison Jones, sent CBC a statement. She is appealing and said both her businesses are distinct legal entities that comply with the law. Some of Pailan's former co-workers complained too. His decision is one of 8 issued by Ontario against Allison Jones's companies. They were told to repay almost $165,000 and fined $2,000 more. Chris Ramsarup of Justice for Migrants says the process is a barrier for vulnerable workers.
There's an expectation that they need to come forward rather than the province or the federal government taking steps to protect the interests of workers.
Roel Pailan is happy about the decision, but worried an appeal might mean he'll never get his money back. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Cities across the United States are celebrating Juneteenth, the day when Americans commemorate the end of slavery in the U.S. Since 2021, Juneteenth has been a federal holiday, one often marked with parades and concerts. Cavalier Johnson is the mayor of Milwaukee.
The thing that really encourages me, that has been encouraging me, is the continued growing diversity that we see around this event. That's not just for diversity's sake. It's because more and more people in our community are starting to understand the importance of this holiday.
Black people have celebrated Juneteenth going back to 1866, but Americans didn't get the day off work until President Joe Biden made it a national holiday in 2021. Donald Trump's White House has no official events planned today. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Angie Seth. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. We're expecting some rain, but not till tonight. Abby's in a moment with our forecast, so stay with us right here. Also, there have been a couple of things developing in traffic, so Sierra's got you covered here on our Thursday morning. Well, this half hour in the program, we're going to continue a conversation about a report that came out from Shared Health this week. It has to show what patients experience in different emergency waiting rooms all around the province. And on average, Black Manitobans wait the longest to be seen, even though they're more likely to arrive to the ER with serious medical issues, according to this report. Now, that's one of the stats from the provincial report that highlights systemic racism in our healthcare system. So we're going to continue our discussion about this morning. Yesterday, we looked at some of the stats surrounding the lives with our Indigenous community. And today, we're going to look at anti-Black racism and how it manifests in Manitoba's ER. So stay tuned. That's coming up this half hour on the program. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who is here with our news headlines this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, people living in homeless encampments near the Disraeli say they want to move into housing, but so far they say no one's offered them a place. The province launched strategy earlier this year to buy up housing units as part of a plan to end chronic homelessness. Maxine Wood lives in a camp next to the Manitoba Métis Federation building, describing chaos and drugs, and police say they're investigating reports of a bicycle chop shop in those camps. The mayor of Portage La Prairie says her city has had enough of repeat offenders who steal from local businesses over and over. Sherilyn Knox blames the court system for continually releasing offenders on bail. We'll hear more from her in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get into the forecast with Abby Adiemi. What's up now?
The sun is already breaking through across the southern parts of the province this morning. We're still seeing cool temperatures in the north. Winnipeg 16 right now. Sunshine takes over for the rest of the day. We're going to warm up to 24. It will be feeling close to 27, and similar conditions we're seeing in the southern part of the province. Flin Flon, we have light rain there right now. Thompson and Churchill, sunny there. Temperatures between 6 and 12 degrees. Most of the regions will be warming up close to 25 degrees today. Winnipeg, we are at 16.
All right, Abby, thanks.
Thank you.
Let's get to Sierra now. She's been watching our commute as always, and there's been a couple developments, eh?
Yeah, as we've been mentioning, there's a truck without a wheel in the median lane at northbound St. Mary's at Dunraven. So that's just after the St. Anne's and St. Mary's intersection in Old St. Vital. So you need to keep right to pass there. There's already some construction in that area, specifically St. Anne's. So expect delays there. And there are backups happening on northbound St. Mary's. I was just taking a look at the live Google map of northbound St. Mary's, and it is showing dark red, which means slow. So expect backups there and some delays. Maybe try and find an alternate route if possible. There's still some time in the show, so if there's something slowing you down out there, you see something, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I just mentioned, despite our province having one of the fastest growing Black communities in the prairies, anti-Black racism is still persistent in Manitoba's healthcare system. That's out of a report by Shared Health that came out earlier this week. We were talking about it on the program yesterday. It does show that patients who identify as African or Black are generally spending longer in Winnipeg Emergency Department waiting rooms than white people. Now, for context, the average wait time for all patients in the province is just under 3.5 hours. People who are members of the Black community on average will wait nearly 4 hours for the same care. My guest this morning is Sume Ndumbe Ayo. She's the director of the Black Health Education Collaborative. That's a group of educators and doctors dedicated to improving healthcare for Black Canadians. As someone who's been immersed in this work for years, she says the findings of this report do not surprise her. And she joins us this morning over Zoom. Thanks so much for being with us to weigh in on this.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So why are you not surprised by what I've just said, that, people who are Black and waiting in our waiting rooms, or perhaps waiting longer and in some cases maybe facing racism?
So the reason I'm not surprised is that when we do this kind of research across a whole host of health issues, across in different settings, be it in the emergency room, in primary care, pretty much everywhere where Black folks are interacting with the healthcare system, we tend to see poor outcomes. And usually this is because of a failing of the system to actually respond to the needs of Black community. We know that across the healthcare system, anti-Black racism remains a very profound reality.
What's the cause of it when you look across the country at the individual cases where this has been happening?
Well, I think it's important for us to look beyond individual cases because, of course, we can cite examples of individuals. But what this report is showing us is that it is beyond one individual practitioner behaving badly. I think that's important. It is really our health system failing us. And what that looks like is we see racial discrimination from healthcare providers. In our own research, we found that our Black folks report that healthcare providers actively minimize their symptoms, and this report actually shows that, right? So you come into the healthcare system and your concerns are not taken seriously. So oftentimes people have to go back multiple times to actually get the care they need and really insist on that. There's a lot of stereotyping which happens in terms of folks being labeled as just being, seeking medication, drug seeking. So we see these really harmful stereotypes which impact care. I think, again, if we think about our healthcare system, are we training our healthcare providers across the spectrum to deliver culturally affirming care? The unfortunate answer is no, which is really some of those gaps which we at the Black Health Education Collaborative are trying to close.
What's at stake if what you've just said there is part of this is if somebody goes and they're not seen or they're ignored, they don't go back. So what is at stake here for Black Canadians if we don't improve the system to meet their needs and to have them feel like they are seen when they are there to be seen for their health needs?
I think simply put, it's lives. Like, we're talking about people, like actual human beings. We're talking about lives, right? And what we know is that when people don't go back, you're delaying care. So already if you're presented at emergency room, it means that you are usually in a dire situation, and this report confirms that. And so then if folks come in and leave because they're not being seen on time, then they're staying at home and their healthcare condition is worsened, right? So then down the line, you have people who again present with more severe health concerns, which again, the literature and the research across the spectrum of issues and settings confirms that, because Black folks are more likely to be underdiagnosed and diagnosed with a lot of illnesses at a later stage, right, which makes treatment a lot more challenging and recovery a lot more difficult.
What stereotypes about Black people do you hope that this research that we're looking at challenges? You've mentioned one of them, but I'm wondering what else shows up when you see the problem systemically.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I want folks in the health system to really understand is that Black communities across this country, across the world, we care about our health, right? We take our health very seriously. And so healthcare providers should understand that when Black folks are coming into the emergency room or into any other setting, it's because we take our health seriously like everyone else in this country. And so that's one thing. I think the idea that people are making things up and it's all in your head, or that Black folks don't feel pain, I think the report also speaks to that, right? Sometimes there's been lots of research which shows that even for the same conditions, Black folks are more likely to be given lower pain scores, which then impacts the kind of care you receive. You're not treated, your issue's not treated with the same level of urgency. So I think really undoing those stereotypes, and importantly, understanding where those stereotypes come from. The stereotypes which we're confronted with in the healthcare system are not new. They're really stereotypes which have been developed and grown over centuries. And so we need to understand those histories and start to actively let them go. As healthcare providers and practitioners, there is a deep attachment to the things which we do. We see some of this attachment in medical diagnostic procedures, which have been proven to be actively racist, but which continue to be used, and bias in medical algorithms. So things like, kidney function scores, which is no longer used. Those criteria are no longer used in the States, but we're still doing that in the Canadian context. So I think what folks need to do is unlearn those stereotypes and actively replace them with practices which will improve the health of Black communities. So really with culturally affirming care, which means listening to people properly when they come, understanding the history which Black communities face, including things like, the history of medical experimentation, which communities continue to live with, which has created a huge distrust. So the fact that in spite of the distrust which exists, Black folks are still presented in the healthcare system. Again, thing emphasizes my earlier point that we do care about our health. So even though the healthcare system continues to fail us, we continue to show up. And so it's way beyond time, actually, that the healthcare system in Manitoba and across the country do better.
Can you elaborate on what you just said there about kidney care and a change that has happened in the States that you say is overdue to happen here?
Yes. So in different medical diagnosis tests, the different ways in which scores are calculated, and with the kidney function test over decades, and there's been this additional number attached to Black people, right? So this is really based on the idea that somehow Black bodies are different from white bodies and white bodies are different from brown bodies, which we know it's not true. There's no biological basis for race. And this addition to the scores do is that Black folks are often given lower scores, which mean that their kidney disease appears to be less severe. And it goes back to my point around if your kidney disease appears to be less severe, then you're less likely to get the level of treatment you need, which means, again, we see delayed intervention.
So what have they changed in the States that we're still doing here around that?
Yeah, so they've removed that race adjustment criteria, so that your score and my score are the same if we have the same level of kidney function.
And do we still have that across Canada? That hasn't changed anywhere in this country?
That has not changed in the Canadian context. And that's just one of many examples.
Earlier this week in a press conference about the report that started our conversation, or led to us speaking this morning, Dr. Marsha Anderson, who led the research, recommended that healthcare providers use the Black Health Primer. It's a module that was developed by Black Health Education Collaborative. Can you give us a bit of insight into what that primer is?
Yeah, so the Black Health Primer is a resource which we launched a year ago. It's available in English and French. And what it does is it's designed to close the profound gaps which we know exist in medical education and public health education and nursing education, pretty much across health education. And so it provides foundational knowledge to healthcare providers, to practitioners, to students on the history of anti-Black racism in this country, how it impacts our health, how it shows up in the healthcare system, how it impacts health outcomes. The course also talks about the ways in which anti-Black racism shows up in other systems, because we know that our health is influenced by way more than what happens in healthcare. It's influenced by where we live, where we work, where we play, where we worship. And so it talks about the ways in which different systems, things like the criminal justice system, policing, child welfare, intersect with the health of Black communities. The course also talks about the ways in which anti-Black racism shows up in things like education, right? So really making the links between our health and where we live, work, and play. I think for me, importantly, the course talks about what can we do as an individual practitioner? What can you do to change how you practice? And it also speaks to the responsibility and the accountability needed in the healthcare system to improve the kind of care which is delivered to Black communities.
There is some criticism of this report. We had it on the show yesterday, that aspect of this. We had someone sharing concerns that it invalidates the Indigenous experience by including other communities, not because the other communities don't need the research and attention, but because the Indigenous experience is, our guest was saying, more complex and perhaps longer history, maybe different research done on it. So just wanting that to be separated out. I'm wondering what your response is to that.
Yeah. Well, I think Indigenous health leaders get to decide how they want Indigenous data and Indigenous information to be presented. Now, what I'll say is that I do believe strongly that the healthcare system has a responsibility to address the concerns of Indigenous people, of Black communities. And in terms of our history, if we think about our history as Black people on this land, there's been Black presence in Canada, in Turtle Island, for a very long time. A lot of that linked to the transatlantic slave trade. And so when Black folks make demands for our health, we don't do that to invalidate the concerns Indigenous peoples do. In our own work at BHAC, we actively work with Indigenous colleagues and recognizing, and you'll actually see that in the Black Health Primer, recognizing the ways in which colonialism continues to impact Indigenous peoples, and also speaking to the ways in which Black and Indigenous peoples have been in solidarity for centuries. Because if we're thinking about what is the problem here, which we're trying to address, we're trying to address the ways in which systemic racism shows up in our society, the ways in which white supremacy continues to impact care. And of course, that impacts Black communities in very distinct ways, and that will impact Indigenous peoples also in very distinct ways. And so I do think that the healthcare system has a responsibility to show up for Black communities, and that doesn't and that there's space and actually enough resources for the healthcare system to do that. I think there's a lot of sometimes in the healthcare system when communities make demands of our government, of our healthcare system, we get met with this idea that there's not enough resources to go around. And I think we need to actively challenge that, because our government, our healthcare system has a responsibility to live up to what they're required to do. And that includes paying attention to Black communities.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. I'm sure it won't be the last time that we speak. And I really appreciate having you on CBC.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is Sumi Ndumbe Ayo. She's the director of Black Health Education Collaborative, a group of educators and doctors dedicated to improving healthcare for Black Canadians. And please go to our website to read more about this report because it's extensive. We have links to it, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
CBC Music Live. Head into the big venues, intimate concert halls, and small stages. Celebrate live music the way it was meant to be. Share in an unmistakable energy of being shoulder to shoulder with music fans and face to face with some of Canada's best musicians.
It's such an honor and a pleasure to play here.
CBC Music Live, brand new season. And catch past episodes right now on CBC Jam.
8:26 is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and we've got a bit of music here for you before the 8:30 news. It comes from a Manitoba farmer, actually, and musician, Zachary. He's going to hit the road. He's heading out on tour with the Irish indie rock band New Dad, and he's able to do it because it's between, he says, seeding and harvest season because he's not busy enough. He's going on tour. Here's a new single from him before he departs. From Zachary, this is Overgrown.
Summer came, autumn went, nothing changed with the reset. Concrete walls, stagnant friends, we wrote our names in the pavement. Living a year from now like Oracle. Nobody wants to leave here on their own. All my love is overgrown, overgrown. Put down roots and let them go, let them go. Oh, it's all that I'm needing, but it still hurts to leave when all my love is overgrown, overgrown. Bottle up everything, cut the ties without thinking. Pack a bag, keep it light, leave some room for the next light. Praying a year from now we've broke the mold. Nobody wants to leave here on their own. All my love is overgrown, overgrown. Put down roots and let them go, let them go. Oh, it's all that I'm needing, but it still hurts to leave when all my love is overgrown, overgrown.
Zachary and Overgrown. How can I say that word? Overgrown. He is going to be on tour, doing a little bit of singing around that tune. He is a Manitoba farmer and musician. He's hitting the road. So he's heading on tour, as I mentioned, with the Irish indie rock band New Dad. Okay, let's get to what is coming up on Radio Noon this afternoon on the call in between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. Marjorie Dalhouse is the host, and she's popped in to tell us what the topic is today.
Hi there, Marcy. Well, we're asking you, are you someone who has experienced migraines? If you are, how does it make you feel? How often do you experience them? How are you actually coping with migraines? June is Migraine Awareness Month, and today the founder of the Canadian Migraine Society, who is a former Winnipegger, will share her experience, but also some resources because she's saying that people don't have to suffer in silence. I mean, about 1 billion people, according to the society, in this world have experienced or suffer from migraines. So it affects a lot of people. And we all know people, Marcy, that have been affected by migraines. So if you have any questions about resources, if you're someone who's suffering from them, we want to hear from you today, coming up during the call in between 12:30 and 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it can be debilitating, and it can be worse also when weather swings. And as we all know, that's exactly what's been happening with the forecast.
Absolutely. Right? The smoke and the change in the weather doesn't help at all.
It's a bad year. All right. Thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
So that's the call-in portion of Radio Noon today with host Marjorie Dalhouse between 12:30 and 1. If you want to share a story now about migraines or weigh in on something that's been effective for you, 788-3797 is the Radio Noon listener line. Stay with us. Your CBC Winnipeg News is coming up next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 16 degrees. We're headed to a high of 24, which is the seasonal high this time of year. People living in homeless encampments near the Disraeli Bridge say they want to move into housing, but so far, no one has offered them a place. Tessa Blakey-Whitecloud is Premier Wabkanu's senior advisor on homelessness. She says outreach teams are visiting the camps and are trying to build up the supply of housing.
It takes time to rebuild housing. We lost a lot under the last provincial government. It took them seconds to sell off. It's taking us time to rebuild. So we're making those investments and working as quickly as possible to move people from encampments into housing.
Police say they are investigating reports of bicycle chop shops in the camps. Winnipeg's mayor, Scott Gillingham, says he understands the frustration of people looking for affordable housing. The city is one of the partners in the province's Your Way Home program to dismantle encampments and find people places to live. Gillingham says it has changed zoning to make it easier for nonprofits to build housing, but admits that is a slow process.
I don't see anyone, or I haven't heard of anyone who is satisfied with the speed at which it's moving, but we're working hard to make it happen.
Gillingham says the city has also identified 7 properties as surplus to be turned into affordable housing. Community members are grappling with destruction in Burge Lake Provincial Park. More than 24 properties burned to the ground as wildfire tore through that area. Paul Grimmer is the chief of the fire department in Lynn Lake. His summer home was among the buildings lost.
And it was just a really, amazing community to be a part of. I had a cabin out there, and it was just a beautiful park, and now it looks like a bomb went off in the middle of it.
Grimmer says despite the destruction, he and others are determined to rebuild and restore what has been lost. The province of Manitoba, meanwhile, did not follow through on urgent plans from 2023 to conduct an external review of wildfire preparations. After the provincial election, the incoming NDP government was advised of plans to hire a consultant to conduct a forensic examination of the 2023 wildfire season. The consultant would also have looked at how well Manitoba was prepared to respond to the next wildfire season. That consultant was never hired. Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says internal assessments of the wildfire service were conducted instead. PC leader Abi Khan is not convinced that prepared Manitoba for this wildfire season.
The question becomes, was this government completely caught off guard of this? Was this government not prepared for this? Why did this government choose to ignore not going forward with the recommendation from the department?
Wildfires this year have displaced more than 22,000 people. The escalating conflict between Israel and Iran has people from those communities in Canada watching anxiously. Ariane Arianpour, former president of the Iranian community of Manitoba, says he does not support the Islamic Republic's regime, but also doesn't like seeing Israeli airstrikes turn his country's infrastructure into, quote, rubble. He says the worst-case scenario would be a prolonged conflict.
That is not good for the people of Iran, nor for the people of Israel, nor for the region, nor for the whole world. The best option at this point is to ensure that the international community, through efforts that involve the Iranian people, dismantle the regime's apparatus and move forward.
The conflict started last week when Israel launched strikes targeting Iran's nuclear and missile sites. Iran has continued countering with missile and drone attacks on Israeli cities. The mayor of Portage la Prairie is fed up with prolific offenders who repeatedly target local stores. Sherilyn Knox posted video on social media from a Portage la Prairie clothing store being robbed. She says community safety officers and RCMP are doing everything they can to arrest repeat offenders. Knox blames the courts. She says too many criminals get released on bail.
Stealing from businesses and with what seems like no real consequences when they get to the court system, and they just go back in and do it again. And so we are frustrated with how a small percentage of people can cause such harm in our community.
Knox wants to see more sentences involving incarceration or mandatory treatment for substance abusers. She says the province should expand the ankle monitoring program for offenders who are released outside Winnipeg. You can hear more on this story coming up on Radio Noon. That follows the 12 o'clock news, Radio Noon with Marjorie Dowhouse today. You can also find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's Heather Wells. Also, Megan Ketchison and Alana Cole from our news department. Thanks, everyone. Our live team, Dylan Longhurst, Abby Adeyemi, and Sierra Sanders. Thank you, guys. Also, reporter Gavin Axelrod with work on today's show. Our current affairs reporter, Jim Agapito in unit, and associate producers Chidi Akuma and community reporter Shanley Vidal, also with work on today's program. And thanks to our producers, Nellie Gonzalez, and senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, Leif Larson, for their work today. All right, we are not quite done yet. Sierra's back in with our last look at the morning commute.
Yes, as we've been mentioning, a truck has stopped in the median lane at northbound St. Mary's at Dunravens. That's just after the St. Anne's and St. Mary's intersection in Old St. Vital. So you're going to have to keep right to pass there. I know backups are happening in that area. And as well, quickly before we go, Pembina at Byng Place. There's a collision in the northbound median lane, so keep right to pass there and expect some delays going down there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sierra. Abby, what do you know?
Bright and sunny down south, cooler up north. The south will be warming up close to 25, and we will see 22 degrees in the northern part of the province. Winnipeg, we're at 16 now, warming up to 24.
All right. Off we go into our day. Off you go into yours, listeners. Thank you very much for being with us today. This has been Information Radio here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube, as I like to repeat, so you can find us. Also, if you have any feedback for us on the program, or you have stories that you'd like us to be covering that you're not hearing on CBC, give us a call, 788-3205. The Current's next with Matt Galloway. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care. Have a good one.